Hey there, Steven. This is Eneash.
Hey, Inosh, this is Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass as in the comic book and movie of the same name?
Yes, although I didn't know there was a comic book until a moment ago.
Awesome.
I was trying to think of something montagey that wasn't just Rocky, and because that'd just be too easy. And I'm pretty sure there's a montage scene somewhere in Kick-Ass or Kick-Ass 2, because there has to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone knows this, but the opening theme for this podcast, by the way, you're listening to Not Everything is a Clue, the podcast where we discuss Alexander Whale's story, Worth the Candle. The opening music is there's that song from the movie Sunshine where it's most popular, but I think it's Adagio, I don't know, in D minor. It's a popular song. It's in every fifth movie. And in Kick-Ass, it's in the first movie there, but it's got like this kind of more metal vibe to it.
Oh, yeah. And it's up-tempo. And like when you first told me that's what song it was, I didn't believe you. I was like, there's no way. It's so different. And yeah, it's a very remixed remix, I guess. But yeah, it is the same song. I guess as far as, a song can be the same song when it's got that sort of alteration. It's like the Sound of Silence by Disturbed versus Simon and Garfunkel. They're just radically different songs, but both really good.
Delightful. Yeah, they're apples and oranges. And then the outro song, for those of you who needed your weekly Marvel reference, is from Thor Ragnarok. But I ran them by Eneash, and he was like, those sound perfect. So
They do, yeah. Although this week, I'm probably going to replace our normal intro with the montage song from Team America. Just because, that's one of the few songs where they say we're going to need a montage. So it's very explicit what it's about, even if it's not accompanied by the visuals.
Perfect. All right, anyone who hasn't seen Kick-Ass needs to. All right, so speaking of kicking ass, well, I guess we got to jump. That was a great segue into the story, but we got some audience feedback here real quick. So you're welcome to summarize. It was mainly on the one point that we had a huge beef with the story last episode. So
yes, someone, I think it was Koi, commented on our Discord when we were talking about the how it was kind of unrealistic that he wasn't popping a boner in the public baths. He says, I get what you're saying, but also hell no. Look, I wouldn't have disbelieved it if he said he popped a boner. I get it, but I also wouldn't have disbelieved it if he said he couldn't pop a boner if he tried in that situation. You can pitch a tent in your grandma's funeral and be completely flaccid come time for a threesome. The duality of man. And yes, he has a very, very valid point, but yeah, I mean, I kind of think this would be one of the situations where he would be popping it and doesn't want to because it's fucking public. Like, it's like grandma's funeral, except even worse because there's no pants on. But yeah, it can go either way.
I'm glad the debate
can swing either way, but that was just too much.
Oh, that would have been great. You almost made a pun, Eneash.
Nope.
Oh, I'm glad the debate can rage on. So
yeah. Oh,
that was almost a pun.
It was, yeah. That's why I liked it because it wasn't quite a pun. But
I was wanting to. I almost had another one there, but can't think of it. All right,
you were wanting to slip one in before we moved on.
That's right. Okay. it was a little hard, but I found room for it. Okay. Well, now that we've made sure to tag that explicit warning label, I want to jump right into chapter 19 montage.
Yes, let's do that.
All right. And it starts exactly like I'd hoped. I texted you. Actually, we were still after we record, the audio uploads. And so we were chatting after that. And I started reading the next chapter. And I was like, it started exactly like I hoped it would.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Bone magic level 10, power tapping, speed tapping, endurance tapping, blood or bone magic level 12. And apparently it's tripled value of knowledge. And then affliction, broken bone removed. And it took him 8 hours and hundreds of bones.
Yes. Big pile of bones sitting next to him, I guess, kind of shriveled and burnt out or whatever happens to them.
Yeah, it doesn't say until they're in the desert that it whatever gets Thanos dusted when they are used up.
Yeah.
So I just pictured a big pile of used bones next to his pile of unused bones.
Didn't one of the bones smoke when the bone mage used it in the earlier chapters?
It did. I just assumed that. I guess I didn't think that it was being turned to nothing, but I guess that makes sense. You're sucking its essence out, so know, from what I know of essences, that's how they work.
I don't think it completely got. Maybe the more skilled you are, the more of the bone you turn into nothing.
It could be that the better you are at it, the more you the more it's dusted, or it could be just the more you pull from it. Because I think his first one that he uses, he says that he hadn't. I can't just scroll up and look at it, but it says something about how he didn't feel anything change. It doesn't describe the bone going away. I've got to think it's like once you've fully extracted everything from it, then there's literally nothing left. So the matter of it just falls apart. And
Yeah,
since once he gets good at it, then yeah, I guess that was the point you're making. Yeah, then it starts turning to dust. But yeah, through the hundreds of available bones in the Gunzels, and that just made me, like I said, think of this giant pile of bones. And it brought to mind that when the bone mage was healing him, she was like, oh yeah, this is from a whatever seagull or something. Its rib will correspond to your rib. And so correspondence seems to like help. But if you just have 1,000 bones to throw out the problem, you can just do that. And even though you're tapping them for less efficiency, you can still drain them that way, which is kind of nice. Sometimes, you can make up for quality with quantity.
Yeah. And, I guess if you're just doing it yourself and you have 8 hours to burn, doesn't really matter that much. The main limitation seems to be the many years of schooling that's normally required to get to this point.
Right. And I think I was listening to last episode yesterday and today, and I mentioned that it would be handy to be able to drain elf bones for luck.
Yeah.
I suspect that something like that is happening somewhere on Erb, that if it's not elves and luck, which it should be, it could be other, non-ethically sourced bones for non-ethical purposes.
Dude, there could very well be some like evil Lich King somewhere that just has a dungeon of elves that he breeds and slaughters when they are no longer of breeding age or whatever, and takes their bones.
Yeah, something
pretty
terrible.
Fucking miserable existence. Yeah,
I mean, it could just be capturing dwarves and using I'm assuming their bones are extra thick because I picture Gimli as durable. Anyway, so that's where we're at there. What else is going on in chapter 19?
Let's see here. He has some time alone to think as Fen and Amaryllis go to sleep.
He sure does. I'm typing that prediction on the prediction list. So yeah, this was fun. Like the last time he had time to think was when he was supposed to be keeping watch, and I liked that sequence. I just put a note that I was looking forward to having some time for him to think too, and it was kind of just trying to summarize it briefly. He's thinking about like first off, he's not tired, which could be time difference, although I think there isn't one somehow because Arab is bizarre. But he's also been leveling up and whatever. And he's thinking just again about how weird the attack at the pool house was. Risen Bile is a terrible name, but it's not worse than faction names I've seen in video games. So
it's true. And sometimes people do call themselves, things that are, bad, gross, something that would strike fear into your enemy, like Crips or Bloods or whatever,
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm not sure what bile they're rising, which is part of what makes the name bad, but, presumably it means something to the people that they're fighting against. It just seems like there's background conflict in the city. I don't know. He's reading a lot into it. Maybe there's something to read into there, but I'm just like, yeah, okay.
Gunshots outside their window, like at a distance, but still, I basically never hear gunshots where I'm living, so that would be kind of spooky.
Oh yeah, but you don't live in I forgot the name of the Aladdin city again.
Agrabah.
Yeah, you don't live in Agrabah. Agrabah. You live in somewhere luckily where it's not quite as bad. So and given that like that the mayhem seems to go on the whole week, and so like I just feel like it's something back what would Raymer call it, just like whatever background setting stuff. Like, oh yeah, by the way, the city is violent. Like it might just be that simple, but maybe these are the real big bads, and they'll be actually more important than Harry's pet rock.
Well, if nothing else, it gives it sort of a I want to say cyberpunk, sort of a dark feel where everything is grimy and crimey, and you aren't safe even when you're in your home base.
Yeah, I guess this also isn't their home base. Maybe it's reinforcing that like it could also kind of just be pushing the thing of like you can't just stay here. Yeah. Eventually the violence will make its way to your doors. So, all right. So before he gets too far, he's like, I don't know, he's thinking about the zero luck bit, and then I like this too. He tries to will a quest in existence in order to get more answers from the flavor text, but that predictably failed.
Yeah.
Still, great idea, and I should have thought of that. He could be like, "Oh, I really think that there should be, I don't know, some way to increase my luck or to solve this problem." And
I would maybe you could try something like, "Man, someone really should do something about those risen bile people," and just like say it out loud.
That would have been helpful, yeah. But alas, the game will not bend to his munchkinry. And so then he begins work on writing down his character sheet and then writing down his like observations of the things that had popped up. There's no like notification log or achievement log as far as we're aware. The only thing that he gets to go back and look at is quests. So I'm sure he writes those down, but he's trying to, I'm assuming, write down everything he can remember that the game has told him so far. All right, so he's writing stuff down, and so Fen and Amaryllis are over sleeping on the big bed, and she gets up and comes over and, hey, what you writing? Just like doing her pastoring thing, being Fen as best she can. Oh man, this was heavy. So she's like looking over and running her finger down the list of like just things. So this list at the time is him thinking of things that he might have invented that might be that he invented that might be in this world. And so she says, "Oh, are you you're listing exclusion zones?" And her finger stopped at fell seed. Or are you just trying to make yourself feel bad? And I'm like, oh, so that thing he keeps talking about, he's worried about, and it's real. And in this too, I mean, so he says he's real. This world has a fell seed. She says, "What, you don't believe the legends? Or wait, you have that broken brain that thinks it invented a lot of the details in this world from whole cloth. So you think he thought up fell seed in what context?" And I don't know what it would take to demonstrate that he has some knowledge he shouldn't have. That said, it seems like he doesn't know anything that might not yet be common knowledge. At least, let me rephrase that. He didn't invent anything. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have the sensation of inventing anything that isn't necessarily common knowledge of the world.
Right. So it's something that someone could be expected to know anyway.
Right. The game layer is telling him stuff he doesn't know. There's a sewer in the way to into Silmar, for example. But
it didn't say a sewer specifically. It said find some other entrance.
Right, that there was other entrance, and then that it was lightly guarded. It could have said busy, or it could have said full of enemies. But it did accurately describe it as lightly guarded. So I guess what am I trying to say? That the knowledge that he has of the world in general, and she goes through a list of like some of the things like on his list of exclusion zones or whatever.
Or she asks him are you listing exclusion zones?
Right, but she's going through things like Felseed, Night Smoke, yes, Parsmod, yes, City of Lasting Blood, technically yes, and so like all of these things, I don't know if any of them are secrets, right?
Right. Yeah,
what he needs to do is demonstrate his knowledge of a secret.
Yeah.
And it could be that he doesn't have any. Maybe, what he has is impressions, like some sort of fever dream. Maybe the stream skewering business is real and he was here a week ago, right? Mm-hmm. Just with more memories. I still am on the fence about that. I think that it would be compelling evidence if he was able to predict something that other people didn't know about, that like wasn't common knowledge. It could be that was his private knowledge before he got mind whammied. But it would still at least be evidence for the fact that he actually invented these things. But we haven't seen anything like that. So
it'd be like you said, if he like walks into a brand new city and knows about the secret entrance behind the bar at this one inn, then that would be something. I mean, I guess you can have magic sight that lets you see secret tunnels or something.
Well, and I guess so they would have to then like say that he's hiding his magic sight. But what it could mean is that June, as of a week ago, remembered using that tunnel before because he's been here, right?
Oh,
and his mind retrofitted it to something he invented. So but it would be at least weak evidence for him having invented it too. So it would kind of go both ways. But I just wanted to pull out the fact that she's keeps calling him brain damaged and stuff, and but he did know things about Fen. He knew where she spent her childhood, right?
Yeah,
and that surprised her. But I guess like clairvoyance and being the author of this world are two very different pills to swallow.
Yeah.
And so like they can accept the fact that like, oh, okay, yeah, you somehow know stuff about us, but that's different. I'd be more inclined in my life to accept that there's somebody somehow with psychic powers than believing that they literally made my planet.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's different pills.
Like,
Um,
I could believe that some alien had come here and scanned my brain and is making me see things, but I would have a much harder time being like, "Oh, you're literally God." That's a yeah,
yeah, whole different thing. Um, I do like that. She says, "Not sure if that particular part of your brain survived your stroke, but he's not someone we talk about in polite company." Just her sense of humor is funny. I mean, it's funny, but also, is this polite company? And also, is Fen literally unable to give a direct answer or any sort of explanation to anything? It seems like every
yeah.
answer she gives is some flippant remark. Don't get me wrong; it's fitting with her humor, but it's almost to the point where I'm wondering, like, is she literally incapable of giving an answer to stuff?
Well, I doubt she's literally incapable of it. I don't know. I guess we will see if she tries to give a direct answer and is unable to later.
If she,
But
yeah, until she actually sits down and explains something, it's kind of like, all right, I've seen this coin come up, heads 4 times. I'm starting to think it's a weighted coin.
yeah. But you're right about, like, she says we don't talk about him in polite company. It's just her and June, and I do not believe for 1 second that she's the sort of person that considers herself to be polite company.
Right.
That is like the fainting Victorian ladies who cannot hear swear words or they will faint.
Their delicate sensibilities.
Exactly.
I
Thank
suppose
you.
it's
That's the word
them,
I was looking for.
right? Them or the police, or you don't start talking about the sort of stuff in front of the authorities or those faint of heart. So I like this. She asks him, like, all right, what is it you think an exclusion zone is? And he gives the answer
Yeah.
that's basically what I've been thinking this whole time. Something kind of like Chernobyl. There's a horrible accident, and we basically draw a big line around it on a map and say, don't go there, you'll get sick and die.
Hmm.
And then she replies, "Oh, and the thing that keeps Chernobyl from spreading is the exclusion rule, right?" And I'm like,
The whole
"No,
world would become a Chernobyl if not for that.
yeah." And I'm like, "No, that you. What is this?
Yeah.
We didn't pass a rule saying that Chernobyl had to stop at the border where we said it was safe. We observed
Right?
the world and said, oh, that's where it's safe." It seems like things go the other way, and we don't get a good explanation of what exclusion zones are, but we get some info. So
Yeah. That is very, like, intriguing because I don't know, it's a cool world building technique where you get enough to be, like, far more interested and you know that there's something going on here, but, like, you don't actually get told what it is, so you get to do speculation and shit.
yeah, you're told,
And
go stand or please stand by and go fuck yourself.
yeah, there was. So I pulled out this next thing about exclusion zones, where he mentioned when they're trying to talk about Chernobyl, he mentions nuclear weapons, and Fenn says, blue fields, because that's an exclusion zone that he wrote down. And he's like, there's nuclear weapons here, which again fits my idea of this place as kind of 1950s technology, because we had nukes then. And she goes, there were, but they got excluded, which is like, does that, like, do nuclear physics not work outside of the exclusion zone? How the fuck are there different places in this world where physics can just be turned on and off in minute detail?
I mean, so I'm totally willing to grant that because it's there's magic. It could be anything, but like again, her answer no because they got excluded. It's like, can you explain exactly what that means, please? And
Yeah,
she's like, no, sorry, I literally can't. Um, and even when Amaryllis wakes up, she doesn't give a good answer. But yeah, that's the thing is like, so he says, oh, so they're excluded and going off in what some dies the fire type of scenario, and that's I think it was a book. Maybe they made a movie out of it, where I want to say it took place. It doesn't matter. Sometime in the late '90s or early 2000s or something. But there was like an event and physics changed, and like gunpowder stopped working and bombs stopped working. Um,
oh
and
sweet.
so it could be something kind of like that. And so then he's thinking, okay, so fell seed can't spread because he got excluded somehow. And she's just like, yep. And I'm like, okay, so exclusion zones sound like weaker versions of some sort of interdict of Merlin. Uh,
Yeah,
you can exclude things to make them stop, whatever that means. But if you can do that, then why can you still enter and exit exclusion zones? So it doesn't put them like outside with a capital O of the rest of the world or something. And plus, what nuclear weapons aren't a place. And
yeah,
so, it's not just drawing lines on a map and saying this is now excluded. And again, it's not clear to me what it would mean in any sort of, if it was a law, it's like, oh yeah, you're not allowed to go here. Then sure, yeah, you can walk in and out. It's a law, not a wall. Um, this seems to be some sort of magic wall, and yet it can be flown into an exclusion zone and presumably make walk out of it. It's
Like, I wonder if you were to take a nuclear weapon out of the blue field's exclusion zone, would it stop working? And then if you took it back in again, would it work again? Or would it now just be broken?
I suspect that you could take it if I don't know how you would check if it's working without setting it off, but
Well, yeah, you try to set it off.
yeah. So I'm guessing if you took it out and then tried to set it off, it wouldn't work, and then if you took it back in, it would, unless
Okay.
attempting to set it off outside the exclusion zone damaged the bomb.
Does
But
that mean it's not radioactive anymore outside the exclusion zone?
I
Or
mean,
is
I
there
guess
just something that happens where, like, I don't know, God just doesn't allow it to explode?
yeah. I mean, so what part of the nuclear bomb is excluded? Is it the radiation? Is it the explosion? Is it the reaction? Like,
Yeah.
maybe everything happens like it's supposed to. It just doesn't blow up. And I know that makes no sense, but there's magic, right? So
Right, yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. And then, so he's like, all right, how many exclusion zones are there? And Amaryllis wakes up and answers. She says 53. And she says, I won't bore you with the imperial politics of it all. And I'm like, please, you're not boring me. And also,
Yeah.
they can't be just politically decided decisions. You can't outlaw an oncoming plague.
Yeah.
It can't, unless it's some council of, super magi who make these, decisions and it just happens. But even then,
Well, I mean, maybe there is some council of super magi. Like, if it is magic, it could be some council of the most powerful mages that have to decide where the boundaries are or whatever.
but if they're powerful enough to make exclusion zones, then I'm curious how there's politics involved at all. You think that it would just be basically the political leaders of the world begging them to exclude things they don't like, right?
Right. Yeah. Or it could be something like just it's like nowadays deciding what counts as a GMO and not GMO is a political thing. So it could just be like deciding what counts as a exclusion zone in capital E, capital Z for political purposes. It matters. I don't know.
I mean, like, what if you
depending
tried?
on how you count, right?
Right. No, wait. Did she say depending on how you count? Oh, by a conservative count, yes. So I mean, I kind of wonder what a liberal count would give us. Like, can you exclude the word zombie so like people can't say it, or something happens if they try, or what?
Maybe
No,
the
I
whole
mean
world is an exclusion zone for Fen explaining things.
it could be. She's telling Elfie maybe elves can't give straight answers to things, but
Oh.
like, I am curious again because exclude seems to mean a number of things. It seems to change the physics around nuclear weapons, and it seems to draw a wall around this unstoppable god monster called Felseed that, for whatever reason, what is it? What does she say? It's called his. I'm trying to find the name of the city.
Oh, the City of 1,000 Brides.
Right. Like, I mean, so he's just some horror monster who's, again, they call it the City of 1,000 Brides, and I can only guess what horrifying thing that means.
Yeah.
I don't have to guess too far, but
No.
I'm sure it's as bad as possible for the 1,000 Brides, and like that's just like another fact of this world. Speaking of facts of this world, we get a good 5 dumps of them later on that I'm eager to complain about. So
Cool. We will get there.
Complain in a happy way, but yeah. So let's see.
Oh yeah, so now Amaryllis is up, and Amaryllis says to Fen, I would appreciate it if you put some clothes on, because up until this point she's just been like in her underwear,
scantily clad.
Yes, and Fen pouts but begins slipping her pants and shirt back on, and I gotta say that is some awesome command presence on Amaryllis's part, because like Juniper asked her, but didn't do it very convincingly because she just kind of ignored him, and Fen like straight up, uses this tone of voice, uses good words, and Fenn's like, all right, fine, Mom, and puts the clothes on. I was like, that's really fucking cool. I envy having the ability to have that sort of presence, which I guess, you would learn how to do if you're a princess, or you'd be a bad princess.
You must speak with authority.
Yes.
There's a great moment in 30 Rock where Alec Baldwin plays this business executive called Jack Donaghy, and I forget exactly what situation he's in, but he's talking about somebody, and he's like, he taught me how to command a room with my voice, and he says it like louder, and like the entire like office stops to look at him.
Nice.
It's just, so you got to just work on that, right? Yeah, I
I
mean,
also wanted to say that, yeah, Fen, ignoring June and then pouting and slipping her clothes back on and everything was just super cute.
yeah, and she makes sure to point her butt in June's direction further too.
Yes.
I think that I'd said,
Just to, yeah.
is it being a creep if she really is putting on a show for you? Schrodinger's creep.
Yeah. It's not being creepy at all because she's doing this on purpose for attention.
Yeah,
Or just to fuck with June,
yeah, specifically his attention.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. So, like, actually, I thought I saw a good example between then and now. Have you seen the movie Legally Blonde?
Oh my god. I have heard so many wonderful things about it and it's on my list, but I have not seen it yet, no.
It's now on Netflix. You should watch it.
Cool.
It's great. The people who made that also made a movie in 2010 called Killers, which is Ashton Kutcher and the actress whose name I can't remember. Anyway, it wasn't nearly as good. It was more of a rom-com, whereas Legally Blonde isn't. Anyway, so in Killers, she's at the bar with Ashton Kutcher, and he goes off to go to the bathroom or something or get drinks, and she's like adjusting her bra to like try and make herself look more flattering. And this guy's watching, and he's like, "So, I saw you making that gesture for me." He literally does exactly what we talked about.
Ugh.
And it was like, and she's like, "No, I was just," and he's like, "Oh, come on, let's dance." And so it was exactly the thing that it couldn't have come at a better, like when, I couldn't have seen that movie in a better week to find that moment for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I bring that up because Fen is not doing that. She's deliberately actually trying to get June's attention.
She is fucking with him. Not that's just like getting his attention, but like fucking with him.
Right.
In a good-natured, playful kind of, way.
She knows that it makes him uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so
if he wasn't such a prude, she wouldn't bother. But the fact that he's getting uncomfortable by it just is,
yeah, it nails it. And then Amaryllis says the next best thing that she's ever said. First things first, I think we should train up June. And then we get the montage scene, which, again, it's, you got to just roll with the badass attitude of Amaryllis here because, she's been explained to, okay, this is how this works. And I'm, she knows this whole situation and she's been familiar with it for like 48 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, I don't have to know what's going on to know that it seems like if we have you sit here and throw knives at this wall, then you'll get better at throwing knives like weirdly fast. So let's get you up to speed. Okay. It's just a badass pragmatism that she's able to focus on the utility of it without even like seemingly being perturbed yet by how insane it all is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he spent a week maxing out his skills, everything that he could. And several of them, like we saw with Bone Magic at the top, when he hit level 10, he got power tapping and speed tapping and endurance tapping. When he hits some even numbers, he gets some perks or virtues.
Yeah, it's kind of like when he hit 10s, for some of them, he would get, I guess they called them virtues. In Fallout, they were called perks. Yeah. Special little bonus things.
I'll go ahead and call them perks, only because I wonder, like, nascent Bladebound, nascent being like what, birthing or upcoming, whatever.
Yeah.
And so the Quills guy was a Bladebound something, and what we know is that means he was a badass ninja. And so he's a up and coming badass ninja that seems distinct from, he got the virtue Ruthless when he killed those two people in the elevator. And like
that wasn't a virtue though. I think that was just a trait, one of those things that you sometimes get that doesn't have any game effect.
I don't know. Maybe.
Hold on a sec.
Yeah, I'm gonna go check.
Let's pause. Yeah.
Yep, virtue, Ruthless.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So it either seems like they're not consistent, or it's the first couple dozen chapters of a 1,000-chapter story. It could be Alexander was still working it out. Because I guess what I'm saying is I know what nascent Bladebound does. maybe the virtue of ruthlessness makes him he's Gandhi having taken one murder pill, and so he'll be less disinclined towards murdering the next person he needs to murder.
That's interesting. Have we seen him be less squeamish? I guess he just murdered the fuck out of those Brisen Bile dudes.
Yeah.
Without worrying about it, whereas when the Fvckin first came for him, he still kind of felt bad killing somebody.
And he hasn't expressed remorse about killing the Risen Bile guys.
Yeah, not even thought twice about it since then.
All right, so
maybe it did change him a little bit.
Maybe. It's not clear though what, I guess maybe so virtues don't have to associate with skill increases. this one seemed to either be unlocked by him committing a double murder or a murder of someone whose name he knew, and this one's unlocked by hitting parry level 10 or whatever. But
yeah, that's interesting because like all the rest of the virtues tell us what they do, right? Or no, they don't. It didn't tell us what Nascent Bladebound does. Like Hardened Knuckles made it so that he wouldn't get hurt as much when he punched things. Dual Wield 10 gave him ambidexterity, which is fucking awesome.
yeah, it's I guess I'll speculate about ruthlessness later, because I kind of get, Nascent Bladebound would then become like Adept Bladebound or something. I don't know what level 2 Ruthless looks like, but maybe we'll find out.
I hope not, but maybe we will.
If he keeps running around killing people, he might. All right, so thrown weapons gives him rangefinder. He can determine more easily how far something was. Oh, improvised weapons level 10 gave him structural assessment, the ability to hold and wield improvised weapons in such a way that they'd break less easily, though never outside the bounds of reason. And remember when his whatever, it was like a postcard stand or something that he hit that zombie with in the gas station, lasted precisely 2 hits before it came damaged and precisely 2 more before it shattered?
I do remember that.
I'm guessing it would now last more hits.
Because it says the ability to hold and wield improvised weapons in a way that they would break less easily. So, yeah.
See, the thing is, though, is I bet Emeralds could pick that thing up. If they had 5, they could all grab one and start hitting zombies with it, and they would break faster for him than other people, just because his life runs on video games and other people's don't. And so when he gets better at it, then suddenly his postcard stands start lasting for more hits. It struck me as such an even and like hard number. 2 hits and then it became damaged, 2 more and it just shattered. Like that's not how things break. I mean,
no, that's fair.
We only saw him use one improvised weapon, but I don't think that it would have lasted precisely 4 hits if Amaryllis was hitting zombies with it.
No, I take your point. I've never tried to beat anyone to death with a postcard holder stand, so I don't know, but it does seem suspicious, yes. This is honestly something I had not thought about before, so I could see...
Well, if we find them for super cheap on Amazon, we can take turns hitting each other with them and see how long they last.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it being a coincidence, but also nothing is a coincidence, so it's probably a video game thing.
That's right. All right, so then he's got ambidexterity, which is kind of cool. Let's see. Oh, yeah, so of course, then Fen rubbing her hands. All right, flatter me. And so he's like, I mean, we're not going to, we're running to fight some mindless creatures along our way to this abandoned castle, right? And she's like, well, they're not mindless. They've got cunning to them, makes them dangerous. But no, they're probably not going to be swayed by telling them how beautiful or what beautiful blue eyes they have. Me, on the other hand, I'd be more amenable.
Yeah.
Like, your eyes are green. And how beautiful are they? And he just goes full Shakespeare. Your eyes, I could get lost in the beauty of your eyes, the way they seem luminous in the morning light. And when I see you smile, that smile touches those elegant eyes, and my breath catches in my throat, and my heart hammers in my chest. Romance
That's
level 3, flattery level 4. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
But remember when I talked about how he could cheese flattery and he'd just be riding on the bike with Amaryllis and just complimenting her hair and, her shoes and whatever over and over?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so that's essentially what he's doing here.
And it worked.
It did work, which is hilarious. Jesus, that scared the hell out of me. Alexa, stop. My digital assistant spooked me. All right. Then I guess because I'm guessing she got shy or something. Or she just thought she'd be even more trolly. He's like, all right, that works. And she's like, hooray, flatter my, tongue. And she sticks out her tongue. And I'm having trouble translating this. And do it right?
I mean, that would be my guess, yes.
I guess I don't know what it means to incorrectly flatter someone's tongue.
I don't know either, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
so there is one thing as they're doing this romance flattery thing. June comments that romance was the worst, partly because I couldn't see myself ever using that skill. And I had to pull that out because I think it says a lot about June that he's got like these 2 young, beautiful women as his adventure companions, and he wants to get with Amaryllis. We are pretty darn sure, considering how much he can't stop looking at her.
One part of him wants to get with Amaryllis.
Yeah, right. And yet he says he can't see myself ever using that skill, like the skill of romance. What is he? I don't know. I guess he's just that down on himself. Does he not think anyone would ever want to be with him, so he doesn't even try?
I don't know if it's that. I mean, we don't. He mentioned he had a girlfriend in his previous life, and he's way cooler here than he was in his previous life. And I can say that confidently, having no idea what he was like in his previous life. Um, so I guess there's a couple things. It could be that, on the one hand, if you're romantically involved with somebody, you're emotionally invested, and maybe he's trying not to do that stuff because of his Arthur PTSD. Alternately, if I had a romance skill of 12 and I was flirting with women at the bar or something, it would almost be like cheating, right? Something
Oh.
about that would kind of just, if I knew that I had an edge that was beyond normal bounds of charisma and charm and whatever, um, it would almost feel.
Okay, so you don't
Yeah.
want. So you think that he feels this would be almost like using some kind of, I don't know, date rape drug or something.
I'm saying that that's possible. I don't know if he necessarily feels that way for sure, but I can see how he might feel that way if he suddenly was, if he could charm the pants off of anybody he winked at. Like that would almost
Yeah.
be unethical to do so.
Right. Yeah. Like, are you really getting consent if the game is just whammying everyone into liking you because you've got a high romance skill?
Yeah,
Huh. That's a darn good point.
but I mean, he doesn't seem to have the same hang up about flattery. But again, I'm not even sure. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think
Yeah, but
social skills are
flattery
hard
can be.
to imagine, like what you would do with them. Uh, if
You would
you're if
control other humans. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I guess there are situations where that's valuable, and others where it's just downright unethical. If he's in a prison cell and he's complimenting how well the armor fits the guard outside his cell, and like the guy's like, "Oh, you know what? You're so charming. Come on out of here."
Yeah.
Like that would be one thing. That would be a use of a high flattery skill. But I guess I just don't know what else. I in most of
Like,
the
you don't
games
want
I've
to talk an
played.
old widow out of her life savings.
Right. You've
But
played enough D
sometimes
and
you
D.
do. Yeah.
What are the nice ways to use these skills?
Well, I mean, you can convince the local peasantry to rise up against the robber baron that's been oppressing them for all these decades, because individually they're scared to take him out. But like, if you get the whole town behind you, maybe you can take him down, and that'll make all their lives better. And it takes some kind of charismatic leader to get that thing going.
Huh. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, but
I'm assuming in a
again,
D and
then
D
you're
campaign, you're doing it to your end because you want whatever's in the baron's chest or something. But
yeah.
like, still makes the peasants' lives better. And if you're using somebody in a way that makes them stronger, that's friendship, right?
That is exactly what friendship is. Huh. Yeah, no, that's tricky. That's wow. That's a thing to think about. I don't know. I always in real life I default to I don't want people to treat me like a child, and therefore I don't treat other people like children either. And it's therefore it's okay to engage with anyone in good faith and try to convince them of things as long as you aren't like lying or using false data or something. As long as you're just trying to convince them with true things that you know about the world, if you manage to convince them, then presumably they're better off for having a more accurate view of the world. And even if it's to your advantage, like, they're fucking adults. They can make their own decisions. You're presenting them with reasons to do things you want them to do, but ultimately the decision is theirs.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like in the Fallout games, flattery skills or something like they're like comes in handy. You can use it to barter for a better price or something. But you can also do it to like, perk up the mood of a companion who's in a bad mood or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
like,
think the main ethical issue here is that since it's a game layer changing things, it's not necessarily that you are trying to get someone's informed consent by convincing them. It's that you can just maybe roll high and have their mind altered against what they would have done naturally.
and see that's the part that's confusing to me and that I'm looking forward to eventually exploring. Like, I just to take, the most sinister example that rolls with the theme, if he's like, "Hey, Amaryllis, let's bang," and his romance and flattery skill is high enough, and she's like, "No, fuck off," and then he just keeps asking until he rolls a 20, like,
Yeah.
and then then they go through with it. Like, does she think it was a natural decision, or does she wake up and be like, "I shouldn't have done that"? Like, does it rewrite her preferences, or does it just seem like that's how things should, how things were going to go in her mind anyway? Like,
I would
I'm,
assume it's one of
it
those
makes
things where you regret the decision the next day.
it might be, but that doesn't sound like a complete critical win, right? Like
Yeah.
it's more like, oh yeah, no, I finally convinced you. Like let's pick a less sinister example. Let's say Fen is depressed about something. Um, like maybe she finds those scars on her arms, like a horrible disfigurement, and he's like, no, they're actually really beautiful or something. And it's like, critical hit, flattery +1 or something. And she's like, hey, thanks. I really never thought of it that way. She suddenly likes herself better, right? Feels more comfortable with herself. Like, you know, I guess I'm only hammering on this because that is less obvious to me. Whereas, like, if I am shooting a gun and I get a critical hit, I've got a good guess as to what that meant. I know what it means to do well when I shoot a gun at somebody, and what that looks like when it is out there in the world. But when I throw a compliment out, I'm curious what it would. I don't know. We'll see. The fact that he wrote social skills into this game means that we're going to see more of them. So I will quit analyzing them and just wait till I see stuff.
Excellent.
So speaking of seeing stuff, was there anything else about? Not much. What is it? Fen is, makes fun and teases him about whatever, flatter me, this and that. So then we get common knowledge about Erb.
Yeah, this was some interesting shit here.
Yeah, some's interesting. Some is like, okay, if you say so. Like, I only highlighted some of it because there's nothing I could do with half this shit. Number two. All right, I'll start with number one. Erb is about 10 times larger than Earth, and it's flat and shaped like a hexagon. And if you went far enough north, you would end up in the south, and that was the same in every direction.
Yeah.
So what's funny about that is, well, he's guessing because he knew how wide the continental U.S. was, and I'm assuming that he's about right here, which would mean that since I know that the diameter of the Earth is about 8,000 miles, that Erb is 80,000 miles long. That said, you wouldn't have to go any farther than 40,000 miles at any time if you're walking somewhere. Which, don't get me wrong, that's quite the fucking walk. But
right, you'd probably take a boat,
or
one of those airplanes.
It didn't even occur to me. We haven't seen a big body of water yet, but I'm like, how could they have a big body of water? This place is flat. It would just fall through the bottom, but it doesn't. Of course, that doesn't have to be the case. I don't know what a flat planet could possibly mean, but that doesn't really matter. But you're right. Of course, there's probably lakes, and it's 80,000 miles. There's got to be oceans and stuff. What I'm getting at is that even though it's 80,000 miles across, if you're at the far west side of the map, you just go west a little bit, and then if your place you're going for is on the east side, you can cut out 70,000 miles just by walking the wrong direction for a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is weird, and must make trade routes and everything just fucking crazy.
For me, this was like a intense sign that this is a video game or a game, at least. I mean, we already knew that and everything, but like, first of all, because it's a hexagon, and we all already know that hexagons are the bestagons, but in particular, they're
octagons for life.
They're extremely useful for gaming, tabletop, and any other kind of gaming, because the center of every hexagon is the same distance to every other hexagon around it, and you can tile them perfectly. They're just like, squares suck because the center to center for diagonal squares is different from ones to up, down, left, right, and many other shapes don't tile very well. But hexagons always work, and that is why any serious war game and tabletop game tends to use hexagons, because they make all those things not be wonky if you're trying to move in a diagonal direction. And also, the whole scrolling off the top of the map brings you to the bottom. I guess that isn't as much of a thing anymore, but I remember the original Final Fantasy, when I finally got my airship and I flew to the edge of the map, I was like, I wonder what happens when I go off the edge of the map. And I just went to the other end of the map, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, because if the world is a globe, if you just go far enough, you are on the other side now, so whatever. But then you think about it, you can't go to the top and end up in the south, and there's no way to wrap a flat thing in a way that works.
And yet, if you did just flatten a planet, that is intuitively how you might think it should work.
Exactly.
And that's why this place seems to work that way.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing about the hexagons with their aspect to gaming. I hadn't thought of that. And I definitely have played games, where you just go to the other side of the map when you go too far. But So, all right, number 2, Arab has no time
Wait.
zone. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Also, yeah. Also, real quick, gravity obviously has to be different if it's 10 times bigger than Earth, and they aren't crushed. But I mean, I guess obviously gravity is different if it's flat. So, yeah,
Oh yeah, I mean gravity has to just again work on intuition of whoever built the universe because
yeah. Things fall down.
gravity would never let an 80,000 mile disk exist,
Yeah,
and so that I mean that's why there aren't flat planets. I remember like annoyingly trying to explain this to a teacher in junior high when we had to read. They made a shitty movie about it in the last few years. I can't remember. Anyway, they go to a 2D planet and they become 2 dimensional and they can't breathe. And I'm like, first of all, that's not how it would work. And second of all, you can't have 2D planets. And my teacher disagreed with me. And I was, a young little shit. I got along well with the teachers, as you can tell. So yeah, I mean, gravity just works because it's supposed to. It would make sense for people to yeah, it just has to. And it apparently works the same. He hasn't mentioned I can jump higher than I could on Earth, right?
right.
So the second one, I didn't even highlight anything because it's like, all right, if you say so. Arab has no time zones because the sun is the same apparent position no matter where you were with no parallax. Despite that, there's still seasons because the sun got smaller in the winter and larger in the summer. And there's also regional variations for hand wavy reasons. And I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. I can't do anything with that knowledge. There are 200 mortal species plus the Animalia, which were anthropomorphic animals like quills. There have been 5 distinct waves of elven migrations from Celestar, each of which was considered a different species. Dwarves. There weren't evil species per se, but there were evil cultures made up exclusively of one type of species, which Amaryllis seemed to think was an important distinction, and Fen rolled her eyes at. That's because Amaryllis is a deeper and more compassionate person and understands that there aren't evil people. There are evil, cultures and memes.
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily in a game, but I think, I agree in general, and I would certainly want to play the game as if that were the case up until something was proven otherwise.
Yeah, how every fantasy universe has orcs, or some variant thereof.
Yeah, the evil mooks that are just irredeemable things that are there to be killed.
Right. And so you don't have to feel bad about killing orcs because they're just monsters. Aragon, or rather the inheritance cycle, if you go the long way, does a really interesting thing with that. They've got their own version of orcs, and there's a lot of mind-ready magic in that story, which makes it a lot of fun. I think you would actually enjoy them. And so I forget at what point, I think he's talking with, they're called Urgles, and he's like, and the Urgle's like, all right, read my mind and see what's, that I'm telling the truth or something. And yes, they run around pillaging and attacking stuff, but they're just kind of like their savage honor culture, but they actually have a society and they have cares, they have families. It humanizes them perfectly. And it's like, okay, I see we've got, differentiated values, but you are people that I have to consider. It does a really cool job with it. So the point is it seems like Fen wouldn't care. She's like, whatever, they're orcs, you shoot them. And Amaryllis is like, well, hold on. Let's actually talk to them and make sure that they can't be reasoned with before we kill them reluctantly.
Yeah, Amaryllis, despite being a monarch and thus I would think probably a bad kind of the bad kind of political person, seems to be on the liberal side of things. This is the kind of thing I would expect from someone who's more on the left. The don't lump all species together, or all people of the single species together like that.
Right. And I mean, I think my impression, we'll get this fleshed out at some point, I'm sure, but, Amaryllis is royalty, but I don't even know quite what that means. We learned that she has a stereotypically sad backstory where she was orphaned at 10. So, it could be that she did have a very humble life for large parts of it. But even so, she talked about eating the manna bread and stuff, and oh no, I thought it was important to know what peasants subsisted on. Yeah. So she actually seems to want to be in tune with people. All right, so we got the time zones, the species of animals, 22 different kinds of magic by a conservative count. Those in the less conservative count include hereditary, racial, or otherwise not the sort of thing that was available to just anyone. And he infers from his character sheet and the way that it is probably laid out that he has access to at most 15 of them.
Yeah.
Which I wonder which 7 he's getting shafted on.
Oh, I mean, I think being able to master 15 different types of magic is pretty damn cool already.
Unless number 16 is time magic.
Oh yeah, good point. You you have a very hard on for that time magic.
Number
I mean
17
that
is immortality. Number 18
yeah,
is whatever, world bending.
yeah. Well, if some of the magics are too OP that if our hero got him, they would just immediately break the game. This is a good way to prevent him from having that, but still having them so that he can have more powerful opponents to fight against.
It's kind of hilarious to think that he can, master bone magic sitting at home with his roast chicken, and he could go to school properly for years and study time magic and never get good, never learn how to do the basic thing with it because
Mm-hmm.
he's literally incapable of learning how to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then the fifth part was the Empire was something like the United Nations. I didn't really put anything out there because that doesn't mean anything. Like, I know what the United Nations is, but nothing about the Empire means anything to me right now. Like, all right, they're a group of countries, I guess.
Yeah.
Which I guess
Yeah,
does mean
but
that
don't
it's
have a lot of
not.
power.
Yeah, it does mean that it's not like one castle with one ruling person. I don't think. Unless that's where everyone from the UN meets, but
Yeah, but it still wouldn't be like the heart of an empire. It would just be a place where people go to meet, and it could change.
Yeah, I don't get the impression that the Empire here is like the Star Wars Empire. I get it as kind of just like the world governing body. So in that sense, it sounds good.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting there. Good, because I was desperate to. I was gonna say it sounds good, but speaking of how bad things are, so June's like, okay, hold on, I'm confused. You said the Forge frenzy is distributed fairly randomly on a per capita basis. And she nods, and he's like, "Well, I don't get how you guys have so much power. Then the descendants of the lost king, like." And she says, "Well, why do you think that? Sure, the power would dilute because of succession of heirlooms and stuff, but I'm not sure what you're getting at." And
Yeah.
I loved this exchange because this is exactly like
Yes.
how two rationalists would resolve a confusion
Oh
that.
shit! Can you hold on just one sec?
Yep.
Thank you. There. I hope he starts following instructions. Motherfucking food delivery people don't know how to follow instructions still.
I don't mean to be eavesdropping, but I could hear a bit. Did Drake say you can't follow instructions? I hope you die, or did he say that after the door was closed?
He said they can't follow instructions. This was after the door was closed. The guy was already all the way back by his car. And
Oh,
I
okay.
said, yep, I hope he dies because, I sometimes over exaggerate things.
What pray tell did he do to earn your enmity so rough?
He rang the doorbell.
That is actually one of those basic things that I tended to be good about if it was on the ticket when I delivered stuff.
Yeah.
It that is the kind of thing that can ruin people's days, or can because again, people got babies, they got whatever, right? Yeah, all right, uncool, dude.
Very uncool.
All right, so
Yes.
we'll kick back in here. What I loved about the conversation, so they're having this back and forth where they're kind of probing each other with questions, and like, okay, well, why would the power retain its value? And he's like, well, more magic items are being created every year. And she's like, why? And he's like, because there are more artisans over time. And she says, why would there be more artisans over time? And what I love about this is that she gets straight to the heart of the confusion. And this is exactly like where, if we came from different planets and we're trying to resolve a bamboozle, I would like to think that this is like the optimal way to get there. She immediately like gets him straight to the crux of the confusion, which is rather depressing. He's like, well, okay, hold on.
His reply to why would there be more artisans was every year there are more people than the last. And like as soon as he said that, I said, oh shit. Because that is finally when I realized where this was going. Because like that's just a background fact of our lives. I never even questioned that there's always more population each year in the world. Like it took this level of them going back and forth before I finally realized that that is an assumption that I make about all worlds and times that is not necessarily true. And boy, does it say some really bad things if it is not true in the current time.
Yeah, that was my. That's when I realized it too. Because again, that's such a base assumption. And then, so when he realizes, like, okay, hold on, maybe this isn't true, he's like, is the population going up or holding steady? And she says, during the reign of Uther Pendrag, 500 years ago, the Hexel population was 20 billion. Today, it's 5 billion.
Yeah.
And, like, that's a steep drop.
Yeah.
Um,
That
I
is a level of things that your civilization depended on simply don't work anymore because there's not enough people to keep the specialization going that requires it.
Well, and it just makes you wonder how bad things had to get for 75% of the population. I mean, not merely for 75% of the population to die, but that includes replacement rate.
Yeah.
And so when I mentioned like the Empire must be doing an okay job because they're not like the evil Galactic Empire. Well, they're not fixing what their biggest problem, which is it seems like Arab is dying.
Yeah.
Um, she says that there are exclusion zones that are a problem that keep getting worse, and I'm guessing that's because they have to keep excluding more things or places or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
and then there are singular events which cause dips in the world population that we never recover from. Like we have events that cause blips in the world population on our planet. Nothing that we never recover from. Like what the fuck happened in the last 500 years that killed 50? I mean, again, they would have died some of them from age, whatever. But you know what I mean. Roughly speaking, killed 15 billion people.
Yeah. If you look at the population graphs of Europe, you can see where World War II happened. Like there is a noticeable decrease in that generation. But the world recovered from it. It's like shit like that would just have to keep happening for the world to be unable to recover, and
Or
that's fucking
you
dark.
think like maybe the largest continent went underwater or something, right? And just took everyone with it, and that took 8 billion people with it. Like again, it that again that's bigger than the dip we saw in Europe in World War II, but they recovered from that, right? Like Europe did. I mean, if you're losing people to big singular events that actually dip the planet population noticeably, makes you wonder. They got rid of nuclear weapons, and the place is 80,000 miles big. It doesn't. Nuclear weapons aren't the biggest problem, right? If you're going to go
Yeah.
try and kill a large chunk of the planet, you need something bigger than a nuke. And
And for it to go on for 500 years, like there's something systematically wrong about Arab.
June puts it succinctly: Arab is dying. It seems like.
Yeah.
Um, I liked how Fen is just kind of being flippant about it. Yeah, people need to start fucking more. I hear that's how babies are made. Um, and she's like, well, and then Fen says, well, that's a leaf. Celistar now, that's a place that died. If you need context for world death.
Hmm.
And Amaryllis is, again, straightforward about it. It's not clear whether or not it's dying. Optimists feel that the final graph will be sigmoid, like S-shaped, with a long period of stability before the first empire, a period of instability, and then a long period of stability again. Um, like, but she's just straight up. She's like, it might be dying. Optimists think it'll steady out. That is not a super comforting way to think about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe he's here to help the world from stopping dying.
Yeah. Um, so then we get a line break shortly after this, but there was a couple lines that I liked here. He says that even before Arthur, he hadn't really been a big believer in bright and happy futures, and he'd always made his world a little dim so that the heroes could shine all the brighter. And I liked that phrasing. And that was the thought that gave me hope. If I had designed this world, maybe I was the hero in it, the one whose purpose was to blaze with light and banish the darkness, which is awesome. Very different approach to becoming this planet's Harry James Potter Evans Varys. I mean, so here's those are the 5 things we learned about Arab, and I guess 6 if you include the population thing. But like, we didn't learn anything about. We didn't get articulation on exclusion zones. We didn't get anything about the gods. How did that not make a short list of things to ask about? I mean, I get it. He's busy, whatever. But it's not bad writing because it's what it is. It's keeping me on my seat. But I'm like, how is that not the second question out of your mouth? Like, oh, tell me about these gods. What do they do? Where do they come from? Can we go talk to one? You said you met 2. It must, and she's like what, 18 or 19 or something. Like, it can't be that hard to get to them if a teenager is able to visit 2 gods. So let's go
Well, I
meet
mean,
one.
she's also the most direct descendant of Uther Pendraig and a princess, so maybe not just any teenager can go see them.
Sure, but she could maybe bring him along or something. I'm just saying, like, if she's able to visit 2 in 9 years or in 19 years or something, it means that it doesn't take 50 years to climb the world's tallest mountain to go visit whatever Zeus. So it seems doable on the scope of. I mean, she's been there. They've got a teleportation pad. Why are they walking to this stupid place in the desert when they could go visit the god of sea and ice? Anyway, they should be doing that, but whatever. I'm sure teleportation pads probably don't work well near the gods anyway. They don't want to be jumped in on while they're changing clothes or something. So let's see. We get line break. Fen and Amaryllis did most of the other preparations, moving through the city to gather supplies when the fighting calmed down for a bit. And again, there's still periodic bursts of gunfire. So like this nonstop background mayhem has just been going on since they arrived. Oh, also they said something about the tattoo. It says, perhaps if the tattoo Amaryllis wore wasn't single use, should have pulled it out and it would have made our preparations elsewhere. And I was like, oh, so it was on a reusable pocket, which I guess makes sense because we watched what's his butt pull that rope out of himself, and it's. I mean, I didn't know that he couldn't put it back. Maybe he could because he's a skin mage or something. But apparently, this is a one-time retrieval thing for the teleportation pad, so it stays there till they're ready to use it.
It does seem that all tattoo magic is one use, and then you got to get the tattoo again.
I suppose. I guess I wasn't sure if this was skin magic or tattoo magic or whatever. I thought it was a thing where, hey, this will fit your disc. You put your disc in there whenever you're not using it, and you could keep it there like a safe pocket. But I guess it dries out the tattoo or something when you pull it out. Also, maybe you remember this. What's her butt? Fen grabs him another sword. Whatever happened to his other one? I honestly can't remember.
I also don't remember. Maybe he didn't like it anymore. I don't know.
The fact that we can't remember how twice I mentioned that people didn't remark on the sword?
Yeah. It's a magical sword that it disappears whenever you're not paying attention to it.
Well, yeah, since he forgot where it was, it's literally just gone. No one can remember where it was because they can't think about it unless it's on his hip or something.
Maybe this is like Harry's pet rock.
Right.
The sword will come back at the very end of the book.
The real shoot. I was going to say like the real lesson was the sword we left all along or something, but it doesn't quite fit. And just like that, we climbed over the wall and set out for Laga, which great, cool. I'm glad we're moving forward, but I was actually kind of bummed that we didn't get to spend more time here. Like the one time he left the house, which was to go to the Bone Mage into the pool or to the bath, like cool stuff happened. And he spends his next week locked up in the room, which again makes sense because he can't run outside and put his foot in his mouth. But I am happy and disappointed. I could have spent 5 chapters here. Next time he goes to whatever, tattoo mage, do something else, right? But
yeah,
meh.
Well, maybe they'll be back to get more tattoos once they're done looting Laga or something.
Could be. So they're moving across the desert, single file to hide their numbers. And
and this is in chapter 20 now.
Yes, we're in chapter 20, Desert Course.
Yes. And they're talking about how these Thom Seekers are basically things that detect any magic that's used and come at it with a fucking purpose so they can eat it. And it's mentioned in this that void crystals and void weaponry are considered mundane, even though, I don't know, looks like magic to me.
Looks like magic. It smells like magic, but you're telling me it's not magic. Fair enough. I guess,
I guess it's just a different kind of physics again.
You got to think, too, I guess a jar of souls would also just be mundane, I'm guessing, right? Like, even though that's like the most magic thing if we had one on Earth, would be the most magical artifacts to ever grace our planet. But like, whatever, void crystals, souls, yeah, that's just, it's Tuesday. So
he does bring this up when they're talking. He says, it's confusing that you even make a distinction between magic and not magic. On Earth, we say magic when we mean something mysterious or supernatural, but blood magic seems like it's got a major university dedicated to its study. And he makes a damn good point, because electricity is basically magic. Like, if you were to bring back electricity 500 years ago, people would look at you like you're a fucking sorcerer. But we don't call it magic because we understand it.
I was talking with, we did our live episode of the Bayesian Conspiracy, and I said the one thing Earth lacks is magic. And people correctly and immediately responded that science is magic. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the less fun kind of magic. But that's just from my point of view, and this is exactly the other side of that, right? It's like, all right, sure, so we have magic, but now it's just that thing you can do if you go spend 4 years studying how to move rocks with your mind, right? Also, another silly, I hope to be articulated eventually, and by silly I just mean like, it's not the right word for it. We get another seemingly arbitrary vocabulary restriction. Never call an Athenaeum a university, she says. And it's like, all right, you say so. Yeah.
First, we can't say zombies. Now we can't call them universities. I don't understand why there's these taboos.
What's with stepping on my free speech?
I'll
But
call it what I want,
right.
bitch.
So what was I going to say about the magic bit? I mean,
Electricity.
yeah, like electricity is earth magic, and it's I don't know, it's an interesting framing of it, right? But like I'm glad you pulled that out because it's kind of the same thing that I think I articulated everything I wanted to say on it. I just did it out of order and thus confused myself. All right,
Yeah.
so
I don't. Yeah.
he's
I don't
got.
know. Like,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. Okay. Well, I was gonna say that. I don't know. I think magic might have some kind of more rigorous definition. Like, it's a branch of physics or something because they still call things magic even when they're fully understood, much like electricity is. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. What else would you call it? Yeah, you'd think you'd call it blood manipulation or something, or
Yeah.
bone essence extraction. You'd find
Like it
some
feels.
not when I'll say the word magic once a week at work. If I'm explaining how something works or someone's explaining something to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this just magically does that for us or something, right? And
Yeah.
me and whoever I'm communicating with both know it's not magic, but we say, okay, yeah, we'll wave our hand at that part because that's just it does it. It's the mysterious thing. We don't really care about that part of it. That's not what any of the magic things here mean.
It almost seems like the magic is defined as that which the thumb seekers try to eat. Like everything else is just engineering with different rules. So yeah,
That's not flying. That's falling with style.
exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of falling with style, he's got the Siloxkovy. How do you say it?
Oh, I don't know how to pronounce that.
The Russian rocket equation for desert
Yeah.
travel. Which you said that's learning through fiction. Isn't that roughly a real thing?
No, that's totally a real thing. That's why it's learning.
Oh,
If
we're
it wasn't a
learning. I
real
thought you were
thing-
saying that he learned through fiction to make
No, no,
Okay,
no.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I like about science fiction is that oftentimes you can learn cool new things that are true and applicable to the real world just by reading them. And I mean, this isn't really science fiction; it's fantasy. So, but that's a common thing that I like about reading science fiction. And
Yeah.
I'm glad to see it here.
Yeah, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson said that the amount of it can roughly be conveyed by thinking that the amount of fuel it takes to get a can of soda off the ground is the amount of soda in the can, or rather, get it to space, and the amount of stuff you can bring is the can, like what the rest of the aluminum. So he's basically got that, but it's like, all right, we're carrying 4 days worth of water, and what's great about drinking some is it's less that I have to carry.
Yes,
So
I've had that same feeling.
yeah. Oh yeah, you went to the desert and did that shit.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, hardcore.
But even when you're not in the desert, if you're just like hiking for a day, it doesn't get easier because you get tired, but you get to be glad as you're drinking water that you don't have quite as much weight that's on your back anymore.
Yeah, and you definitely notice the lack of having to carry all this around. And of course, if you're in a survival situation, you look back and reminisce on the awesome days where you had too much water that it was so uncomfortable to carry because now you're thirsty. But
Yeah.
What are we going to do? So they're going to keep walking through the desert. It's pretty uneventful for the most part. Hasn't allocated, because I was thinking about this in the last chapter. He hadn't spent his last skill point that he got when he leveled up after. When did he? Oh, it would have been the level up was right after he got out of the elevator and the skin mage died. So he hadn't spent that point yet, and apparently he's still holding on to it. And I like that. His reasoning is there were skills I hadn't uncovered yet. I didn't want to commit to something only to find out that I'd given up on something amazing. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense. If you don't need to spend them, hold on to them, and then if you discover, I'm gonna again use time magic as the example, but it could be just the awesome thing. Then you can just start dumping points straight into it, right?
Yeah.
So
I
holding on to level
comments.
ups is valuable.
Yes. Okay, so I have two comments on this. The first one being that I think, just like a technical comment, I think that skill points are the things that he gets when he uses a skill that eventually, top off. And ability points are the ones that he gets when he levels up that he can then distribute among his stats. Or maybe stat points or something, but like skill points are different from what he gets when he gains a level.
Okay, right. He's got parry level 10, and that's he's and if he went to 11, he got a skill point in parry.
Yeah.
I'm
And
calling
that
it the
goes up
wrong
just by
thing.
pairing things over and over.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. So I'm calling it the wrong thing. What did he call it? He hadn't allocated his points from his level up.
Let me
Oh,
do a.
ability points. Yeah, like what you said. Fair enough. So yeah, he hasn't spent those.
The other thing is that like I also do this thing where I get the skill points, I don't spend them. I get like the gun parts in Last of Us. I save up until I have a lot before I use any of them. Um, Whenever I get gold in a video game, I instead of buying potions or whatever to use it, I save up for my video game retirement, and it always feels like I'm being kind of a chump because by not spending those things, I am losing the advantage of having those extra skills or extra gun upgrades or whatever until I do spend them, which sometimes is hours of gameplay if I'm being really stingy and stupid. And like you keep the ability to use them on other things, which is nice to have that flexibility, but you lose all the advantages of having those extra skill points or whatever it is while you're playing. And I feel bad and stupid oftentimes for doing that. I'm like, how much easier could this have been if I had done it, if I had spent my skill points right away?
What's delightful about that is I think that's probably a universal gamer experience. Like, you haven't really beaten RPG until you go to face the final boss with 300 pounds of healing potions just because you never used them throughout the game because just in case, right?
Exactly.
And so the gun parts in Last of Us is a good example because you can use them to improve your weapons. Reduce the weapon sway, increase the rate of fire, whatever. But you only get a set amount of gun parts throughout each playthrough, and for all you know, so I will wait to spend most things until I've gotten everything, and then I can say, oh, okay, I'm never going to use that weapon. I'll use them. I'll go ahead now that I know what I could be spending these on. Now that I know everything that's available, I'm comfortable spending them on whatever now. But I never want to spend them before that because what if the last gun is the machine gun flamethrower, right?
Right.
And so it's like, if only I had saved up my gun parts, I could have made that machine gun flamethrower shoot chain lightning. And so um, you never want to get screwed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's rough. I think I'm too conservative, but I still do it.
no, yeah, we all do. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, healing potions in Skyrim are the best thing because eventually you just start throwing them away or selling them because you never use them, and then you like hold on to all the ones that are full restores. Then you find yourself never using those either.
Yep.
So what's fun is like this. This is it's hard to balance, and maybe I'm bringing this up because I was video game related, and his life is a game. Like part of what makes you need to use your resources is like scarcity and pressure, right? You can't budget your way to having a ton of ammo in Resident Evil.
Right.
You need to use plenty of it to get through the game, and there's not that much of it. So, like, sure, you can waste some, but you're never going to have. Oh, thank goodness, I have 99 shotgun rounds, right?
Yeah.
You'll never get 99 shotgun rounds. There might not be that many in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just part of it is scarcity, and the other part is just making sure you need to use your stuff. All right, so desert's not too terribly hot during the day, and surprisingly cold at night, but not unbearable.
It's really surprising just how fucking cold a desert can get. I mean, I'd always heard that they get really fucking cold at night, but like, it's just hard to believe until you've actually experienced it, and you're like, holy shit, there would be snow here if there was any moisture in this plane of existence.
Yeah, I having not been in a desert in the middle of the night, I'm only able to guess what I've heard from the things, but I am imagining that I would probably just like him. Hey, you know what? I told they're cold, but I'd still be surprised. There was a line in here where he mentioned about how he had done some weightlifting in the room to increase his athletics, which he's like, I didn't think that those muscle groups were related, but I still seem to have an easy time trekking through the desert than I would have before. And like, yeah, those they aren't related. Like Shaq could throw me across a room, but I could out jog him, right?
I mean, I take your point, and I think you're that yes, point well taken. But on the other hand, Shaq was a basketball player, right?
Was, yeah.
Doesn't that include a lot of running back and forth across the court?
It did. I think Shaq now I could
Oh.
outrun. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure Shaq now could still throw me over my, at least to the parking lot.
Dude's
so
like, yeah, huge.
Yeah, he's a giant, but like if the two of us were in and I'm not even that fit, but I think if the two of us were in a contest to walk into the desert, I might be able to outwalk him. but that the entire time he could still throw me. And I could never throw him. So the fact that he got basically athletics slash endurance or whatever you want to call it, stamina from lifting weights is surprising and does speak to the game layer impacting his metabolism slash body, right?
Yeah,
His cardiovascular
just
system.
yep. The games are always simplified to approximate the real world, and he can take advantage of that now.
Yeah. So let's
Okay.
see. So when you picture Thum Seekers, and we'll see one later, but it doesn't describe it very well. I was picturing at first like the I don't know, whatever you call it, the disposable mook army that Thanos has in Infinity War, like the four-legged, but they can run bipedally, and they've got a big mouth and claws.
Okay.
I was picturing that, and now I'm kind of picturing like a Demogorgon from Stranger Things. But
Oh, okay.
I don't quite. What are you imagining when you see these things?
I imagined basically like a hellhound kind of thing, a giant pit bull looking deal.
Right on. I'll roll with Demogorgon. That sounds like fun.
Okay.
All right.
When they're talking about them and what they're, how they're always going after magical things, it says that they don't go after latent magic, and that in this world, latent magic included anyone with skin, bones, or blood, and we happen to have all three. And that just made me think like that's, I guess there's skin magic, so having skin is magic. Like that's weird, and that word really must mean something different in this world.
See, I took it to mean that they had potential magic, which I guess isn't the same thing as latent, but like, what are bones if not spears ready to be sharpened, right? So like bones are latent weapons, but they aren't really weapons until you start sharpening them. That's sort of what I pictured with skin, blood, and bones here is that like, yes, skin can be magic when you do magic to it, but before that it's just skin.
Okay.
When he's not doing blood magic, his blood is just blood.
Right,
But
and that's why they don't come running towards them, even though they have skin and blood.
right.
'Cause-
And I guess latent might just mean potential but turned off in this case.
yeah,
Or maybe
think so.
maybe I don't know what latent means. If I define latent, it tells me that it's the quality or state of existing but not yet developed or manifest. Oh yeah, so close enough.
Yeah,
All right. But yeah, it is funny just to think that. So he's like, walking through the desert. All right, don't think about your blood, or else it'll start becoming magic.
yeah. So then we have another flashback to Earth.
Yeah, I didn't cut anything out of this except for the end, where it was just, it's a bummer. But
It is.
hit it.
Okay, so I mean, he does say, I believe this was near the top, where years of schooling had made me very adept at zoning out and thinking about other things, which just reminds me how bad school is in general in our world. That, a good school would not train kids that are smart on how to zone out and think about other things while they're stuck sitting in school not learning. So that sucks.
School sucks.
Yeah, the way school is done really sucks. Like, I enjoyed a lot of it, but I mean, he's right. I also developed that skill for the same reason, and I think that's kind of a waste.
I agree. I think the future will have more articulated schools where things actually make sense, and or rather, you don't look at it and say this is a completely lost purpose. It accomplishes what it's setting out to do in a way that will just bring total shame to the way that we all went to school.
Yeah. But this particular flashback is primarily about Tiff, his girlfriend, and how their relationship how their relationship does fall apart after Arthur's death. And it first talks about how she came to join them.
Yeah, I think
Well,
that
not first.
it was just that she had an alternate trajectory into their D&D group because she was like in a different friend group at the school or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was kind of funny, like an NPC backstory. Like they don't really exist in quotes until they cross your path. Because he says that her alternate trajectory into our D&D group always left me feeling like she hadn't actually been in Bumblefuck until some time before that first session with us. But that's also just I don't know if that's supposed to be anything or not, but it just kind of brings that to mind.
Yeah, I was wondering, was that like just a turn of phrase when you used NPC backstory?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's part of the confusion where people were asking us earlier about how we use PC versus NPC.
But that's in my notes,
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, valid. I just meant it that was a turn of phrase or like a reference to that's how things work in video games. But I don't think that his life on Earth was a video game like it is here.
Okay.
So
Got
yeah,
it.
she was a sapient person, assuming that she's real, and had thoughts and feelings, assuming that she was real. And there was it's just this sad bit. They're hanging out on her roof, and she's been crying and she's worried about him, and he's doing the thing where he isn't letting himself feel his feelings, and she's doing the wise thing of recognizing that's what he's doing and trying to raise his attention to that. And
Yeah. She
he's
says it.
he
It's
shuts it
like you're.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. She says it's like you're waiting to show people how much you're hurt. Like he's just holding it up and storing it up so that when the time comes, like he can show them. And I think that is a really, really bad coping mechanism. First of all, but like also, this is toxic masculinity. Like that's just straight up what it is, and fuck that. And there was a little bit of talk about this on the Discord last week when it came to whole, is he a creep? Is he not a creep? When he's looking at people, why does he keep saying, okay, I know this is kind of creepy, when all of us reading it are like, no, you're just being a normal kid. I think June is suffering from a lot of internalized misandry here, and that is just all the more apparent when he has this fucking toxic masculinity coping mechanism. It is very much a I guess because he grew up in Bumblefuck, Kansas, a thing that he's been inoculated with, and I think we're going to see a lot of it impacting the choices he makes both on Earth and on Aerb.
It could be, yeah. I mean, it seems like he's got some bad habits to overcome with his his cognitive algorithms, right? To be
Yeah.
as abstract as possible about it. There was a bit here that I kind of pulled out without highlighting it. So she says, she's like, there's part of you that's sinking into this depression. And she's like, it's like my uncle who has a concealed carry permit, and he's just like stoked on when he finally gets to use it someday. And he's like, you think I wanted Arthur to die? And she's like, no, I mean that you're waiting to show people how much you're hurt. That vibe. It's kind of like he mentioned that he wasn't like the happiest person before Arthur, right? And so like I've been in this mindset where it's like, oh yeah, if only I had some tragedy happen, then I'd have an excuse to give up. And that's kind of seems like what he's wanting to do here.
Yeah.
He's like, oh no, this, and I uniquely get to give up because, as he keeps saying, it's not the same for you guys. It's different
I loved
for me
him more than anyone else. Yeah.
Right. And so, you guys don't have the same excuse I do because it meant more to me.
I thought when he said that it's not the same, I pulled that out too because, like, I don't know exactly how to feel when he says that because he's right. Like, on the one hand, it's not the same for anyone else. No one had that level of relationship with Arthur that he had, and they can't feel what he feels. But like, on the other hand, that's true about every single person in the world. Like, you can't say about anyone that has lost someone that you know what they feel like, because their relationship with that person is unique and different from your relationship with that person or your relationship with someone else. Like, even if you lost a kid and someone else also lost their kid, it's two different experiences. Even the parents of the kid have two different experiences of having lost that kid. So it almost doesn't mean anything to say it's not the same. It's like, yeah, sure, it's not the same, but on the other hand, fuck you. People kind of can still know what you're talking about and what you're feeling, even if they don't have your exact circumstances.
And I got the impression that he's kind of shutting her feelings down because he even says it's not the same, and she's saying that, or she's saying it's the same for me. Yeah, she lost a friend, and he says it's not the same, almost by reflex. And it's like, again, he's giving himself this unique license that only he gets to carry. That says, hey, look, I get to make this my, life-ending big deal. It's a bummer. I think that I can well imagine his mindset, and it's not a good place to be. And this little cutaway ends with Tiff missing the next session because of a doctor's appointment, then one because of a family thing, and then she stops giving excuses and didn't show up, which was probably for the best given how those sessions went. So anyway, his cold nights in the desert are pretty miserable because he
They
got nothing to
are.
do but sit and think. Um,
Yeah.
there's the multicolored sky and Celestar. At least cool stuff to look at. Um,
So the Celestar thing, I pulled that out too. He says Celestar hanging in the multicolored sky to remind me that sometimes things got ruined and could never be fixed. Because Celestar is, the moon where the elves used to live until it got ruined, and there's no way to ever go back there and fix Celestar again. And it's just a constant reminder in the sky every night of how ruined things can get and how they can't be made right. And like I loved this. That was beautiful, and one of the great things about science fiction and fantasy is that it can take emotions like that and give them a literal thing like a moon in the sky that the elves have fled from and literalize that thing. And that was fantastic. And I had to call it out. And the worst part is I had forgotten that this scene was in the book because it's so goddamn long. That at chapter fucking 230, it had just slipped my mind. So I'm glad I'm rereading this. That was a cool thing.
Awesome. Yeah, it does. He's a good writer. I don't know what to say. I mean, you articulated it better than I ever could. Two things occurred to me. One, saying that it can't be fixed, that sounds like quitter talk. Get your levels up and see what you can do about Celestar. But also, did they space travel from Celestar to Erb? Or did they just teleport with magic?
It hasn't said specifically yet, so your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, I don't know. Man, it'd be kind of funny if they just built like a giant catapult and launched one elf to Erb, and then that person could get a teleportation pad and start migrating, people.
Yeah.
All right, so we do get an explanation for why they can't use the teleporter like I had planned on cheesing it.
Yeah, you talked about it in our last episode. Just walk as far as you can, then teleport back to the city, sleep for a while, and then teleport back to the desert and walk again. I didn't cut out who was saying this, but it was probably Amaryllis because she's the level-headed one. Says that if they do this when they come back, the Thom Seekers will surely be waiting for us because they'll have used a magical item in the middle of the desert, and they will all come running. And when they teleport back to that spot, they'll already be surrounded by all the Thom Seekers that were drawn by the magic. So I think it's cool that there is an explanation for something that, we were wondering why can't they just do this a couple chapters ago? And this isn't the first time this has happened. There was at least one previous time, maybe two, that I can't remember the details right now. But, I like that. It gives me more faith in the author. It makes me more likely in the future when I stumble across something saying, well, why don't they do this? To think there's probably a darn good reason for it that we'll find out soon.
Yeah, I love it. That's the kind of again, if I'm not good at defining what ratfic is, but like porn, I know it when I see it. And this is one of the things, right? Like there are no obvious looming opportunities that people don't acknowledge or that they don't take advantage of for no good reason, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, why aren't they doing the obvious, smart thing? It's like, oh, because it turns out it's really not smart for this glaringly obvious reason that these hellhound demogorgons will be waiting for us when we teleport back in, and or be summoned by apparently the sky beam of magic that this thing gives off when you use it. So, even if they were to summon in a week later after things cooled down, they would still come charging in. By the way, they're having this whole conversation because their trip through the desert was running too smoothly, and Amaryllis uncharacteristically suffers a fall and wrecks her ankle.
Yep.
I say uncharacteristically because she seems pretty sure of foot.
Maybe it's because of June's luck of 0 still. That fucker's got to put a point in his luck.
Because the people around him will keep breaking their feet.
First he gets a bunch of people at a bathhouse murdered. Now someone breaks their foot.
I don't feel like the bathhouse is on him. It'd be almost a bummer if this was. If my bad luck could if he fell and broke a foot, that'd be on him. But if that's the case, he's got to start leveling that up so, people start just tripping into piles of money. But if his luck was 10, she would have slipped but been unharmed and then landed and like, oh my God, underneath the sand here is a chest full of water, money, and guns. Like,
yes, exactly.
Anyway, so they're fashioning like what do you call that? I don't know, like one of those little dragging sled. Yeah. and he gets engineering unlocked. And
Huzzah.
I was like, hell yeah, time to grind until he can make a void bomb out of chewing gum and dirt. But
Oh, yes.
more interestingly, Amaryllis had apparently improved the void rifle over the week that they're hanging out at the hotel. And unless she did that outside their hotel room, then that means that like he didn't look over and be like, "Hey, can you show me how to do that?" Because that would have been a good opportunity for him to learn how to grind engineering too.
I would bet that it was probably she was bored while he was grinding up his other skills like parry and throw and all that.
Yeah, still
And
though.
so went off to do that then.
And I guess since it was just unlocked, he can't have had the idea before. Be like, "Hey, by the way, let's have you take this apart and put it together 50 times until I can do it in my sleep," right?
Yeah, yeah.
But next time, there'll be time for that later. So
Hmm.
yeah, and you said it's an OP skill IRL too. It sure is.
Yeah. I mean, it takes us a bit longer than 2 days to level our engineering skill up, but oh my god, look at what we've done here.
Yeah, we're having this conversation at roughly the speed of light over our magic boxes.
Yep.
So,
Oh, yeah, I meant we as in the human race, but you're right, even the two of us are, yeah.
I mean, human race gave us this ability. Yeah, we didn't make this shit. The two of us, right?
Right.
We found a couple of these things, but anyway. So they're going back and forth on the very sensible idea of like, look, let's just bail. You know, your heirlooms will be there in a week. Let's go back and regroup. And it seems like the tattoo won't work. Which is kind of like, I think Fen calls it sus because like, oh sure, because you want to go get the stuff. And I like that Amaryllis just points out, she's like, I'm not a fucking idiot. What's my plan to like psychopathically make us get there and then like whip it out when we get there and say, oh look, it worked this whole time? Like,
Yeah.
you know, if she says, if I were a sociopath, you could trust that I'd at least be the kind that looks to the future and doesn't get caught in obvious lies. And I'm like, whatever else comes down the line from her, she's at least not stupid. If she turns out to be, whatever, one of the baddies, she will be an interesting baddie. But before that, there was a bit where, because they're debating, do we continue on or do we bail? And you pulled out the line where Amaryllis says, continue on, we're not far. And Fen looks over at him with a raised eyebrow and mouths the words voting block. And I liked how his response, he's starting to pick up her sense of humor. He surreptitiously flips her the middle finger and she smiles. And I just put communication skills +1.
Yeah, that was cool. So then when they this out that they can't get the thing out of the tattoo, he gets a quest. Exit strategy. You are stranded in the desert with limited food and water, no access to magic unless you want to risk being gutted by feral thumb seekers and a wounded party member. Hope you prepared carefully.
So this is interesting because I am pretty confident. I don't know. I should assign a probability. I'm leaning in the direction of the tattoo wasn't actually working. That for whatever reason it was blocked from success for her, right?
Yeah, as opposed to her lying.
Yeah, but the quest does say you're stranded in the desert, and no access to magic unless you want to risk being gutted. It doesn't say the teleportation device is broken or inaccessible, but it explicitly says later now you can use it again. And so I pulled that out when we get there, but I just want to plant a flag there so remember to circle back because it almost seems like the game layer is making things happen. And that is, up until now, there's the tutorial section. He's kind of playing on bumper rails. He has to go certain places, whatever. Mm-hmm. But if it contrives to change the way that the world works around him in mysterious ways, and then unchange them when it's done fucking with them, that's weird.
So, like, if you think the game did not originally have this, the teleport won't work thing until they got it into a tattoo on her, and then the game decided, well, fuck it, I'll make it so it doesn't work.
I don't know. I need to think about it. Like it would be weird if the game is contriving situations to put him in just to make things happen. Again, for the sake of things happening. Of course, they couldn't have a peaceful walk through the desert. Like that was never going to happen, right? And so maybe when it looked like they were going to bail, the game is just like you cannot fast travel from this location.
See, it could have. We could have had a actual peaceful walk through the desert and they just get at the fort. We just wouldn't have had a chapter for it. It would have just been like, and then we got to the fort and now shit goes sideways, But I kind of disagree that the game, it's weird for the game to put them in situations because the whole purpose of any of these games is to put the hero in difficult situations, right? Like you always got to fight your way out of something or get the next magic item or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I meant by when I said they couldn't have a peaceful trip. Like they played up these Demogorgons so much, like there's no way we weren't going to run into some. But like that, so I mean that's accepted. They were always going to run into trouble. But having it change the way the world works, suddenly this magic tattoo doesn't work, but it will again in an hour. That's a level of getting involved that goes beyond just like I'm setting up challenges for you to overcome, right? Again, if it disabled fast travel because you can't fast travel during this part of the quest, that's fine, but that's a level of involvement that surprises me, right? Like if you were DMing, and this I hadn't thought of putting it this way until just now, so if the analogy sucks, let me know. But like if you were DMing and your party was in the situation, and you were like, and they were like, oh, you know what, we're gonna get the teleportation pad and bail. And I think it would be a lazy DM for you to say, mysteriously, you can't retrieve the teleportation pad. Like, because you want them to face the thing. You'd find some way to try and make that happen, I guess. But like, it just works again later. That's so weird.
Okay, so I'm going to say, first of all, I think that, like, I mean, we just talked about it earlier about how we get explanations for things later. So I could see that being a thing here where we get an explanation later if that explains it. But
I'm sure I will.
Saying that
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sure we will get an explanation. There's no way they're going to just like roll past this. But if the explanation turns out to be the game was fucking with me, and sorry, you're in my party, it's going to fuck with you too. That will be. I'm not calling bullshit or saying it's bad writing. I'm just saying that's a weird game that I don't necessarily approve of because the game is like going to go out of its way to fuck with me. But what were you going to say?
It would be unsatisfying.
Yeah,
is what you're saying. So yes, that's I agree that would be unsatisfying. But you keep saying that like an hour later it works again. Where? What? How? Where do you get? Why do you think so?
At the end of the next chapter, when they complete Mothballs, you have arrived at Karalaga and laid claim to the heirlooms. You may return to Karalaga anytime with your teleportation key.
Right.
Oh, it doesn't say that the teleportation key works again. It just says you can come back here using it.
Right, yeah, because now that they've gotten here, they can teleport back, since they can teleport back to places they've been.
Well, but that's assuming they can retrieve the teleportation key from her arm.
Well, yes, it is assuming that, but...
Yeah. So I misread this, or I misinterpreted this before. I thought it was saying you can come back here with your now newly working again teleportation key.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I thought that it was saying like, oh yeah, now that you've got here and finished the quest, now she can retrieve the key. That's what I read into that, but I think I read it wrong.
Okay.
Good job catching me on that, because I confused myself. So we don't get confirmation. So they're going to be, hopefully they're stuck and doing interesting stuff in Karalaga then when we keep going. So I mean, if they could just bail and then come back, that'd have been fun. But again, I'm convinced everything will be fun and satisfying. It's not that I'd find that it unsatisfying while reading this story if it turns out the game is going out of its way to fuck with them in ways that just like ruin the established physics or something, right? Like if he enters a certain zone and for no reason blood magic stops working, and it's like, oh yeah, because the game thought it'd be too easy for you to be able to use blood magic here, so you just can't. Like that again sounds lazy. That said, it's not lazy writing, it's lazy DMing, in that there's the two different things, right? I completely trust Alexander knows exactly what he's doing and it'll make everything satisfying and awesome. I just find it I find myself confused, and I would be that adds a level of involvement from the game layer that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Up until this point, it's been describing things. It hasn't been doing things.
It's been pretty discreet about stuff.
Right. If it is doing things, it's super subtle, like maybe making 3 amaryllises till he finally talks to one.
Right. And we still don't know if that's just us being too paranoid or if that really is what happened.
Exactly. So I don't know if the game is... That's what I pulled that out when the quest comes in. I said, God damn it, game. It's deliberately fucking with the physics/magic of the worlds to make this quest.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then what did you say? You said you like the I hope you prepared carefully at the end.
I thought that was cheeky, since their earlier quest was you better prepare carefully or something.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. It was like prepare carefully before you set out. I should go back and look at that one. I'll look at it later. But yeah, you're right. It explicitly tells them to prepare carefully. And this one says, I hope you did the thing I told you to do.
Yeah.
I love it. And then there's this funny thing. We can actually basically skip it. Anything that you want to pull out, we can. But there's this line break. And it says, maybe I should backtrack a little bit here and give you some history. which might clear up some of the mysteries. If you're one of those blah 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 history people, I'll meet you at the next line break. And I'm just like, did any reader anywhere on the internet actually skip to the next line break?
I seriously doubt it.
I mean,
There may be one or two somewhere, but I would be surprised.
yeah. I mean, if they skipped and they didn't just run back up to read it again, it's not like it's going to give you a 400-page digression on what's happening with Robert Baratheon right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's a minute and a half of paragraphs. Like, just
And like you can tell from the scroll bar that you're already pretty close to the end.
right.
You're not going to be having to read a 6-chapter whatever.
Yeah. So the short version is that it's Amaryllis is the most direct descendant, and how is that? Well, because they married or they fathers sired children late in life, and they made an explicit effort to have a very tight family line.
Yeah.
So
Says men carrying the long name were both long-lived by human standards and had children really, really late. This wasn't just happenstance, not after the 4th generation. It was a specific reproductive strategy. And, like, that sounds fucking miserable. Like, you can't have kids, I guess you can still fall in love with people or whatever, but, like, your entire life is going to be dedicated to waiting as close to your deathbed as possible before you reproduce. And what the fuck? That's a shitty ass life, man.
I mean,
Maybe the rest of life is awesome. You're still royalty and everything, but that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, you're still royalty, and you still have access to all these super magic, artifacts that other people can't use because your blood is the right purity. So, like, you're at least super incentivized to take this one hit on your life freedom. And it says it wasn't an accident after the 4th generation. Well, her father had been 82 when she was born.
Yeah.
And given that Pendrag was 500 years ago, or that Uther was, it's been like 5 or 6 generations if they've all been waiting till their 80s to have kids.
Yeah.
So, like, of course, that's a pretty close relation, as far as when you typically think 500 years back, right? You don't usually think 6 generations, you think 20. So
yeah.
They've definitely pushed it as hard as they can. And there's also obviously some magic involved because 82-year-old men can't really sire children on Earth, I don't think.
I think it's not impossible, but it's fucking hard.
It's ill-advised, I think, but I don't know if...
I would have bet there's magic involved too.
Yeah, because I don't know if there's what exactly old age looks like on the male side for, we don't have menopause, but I got to think at some point your swimmer stops swimming, right?
Yeah, well, the older you get, the less potent the sperm becomes. Like,
right.
For women, there's a hard cutoff. For men, it just keeps declining all our lives.
I just
Actually, an interesting thing in ancient Rome, it took men a long time to become established. Like, you weren't considered marriageable until you were in your late 30s, 40s maybe, because you had to go serve in the army, then you had to go and like rise through the political ranks and all that. And so the men were less fertile than, men who'd marry in their teens and 20s. And one of the ways they got around that was by got around that problem of not being able to have heirs was by marrying really young women. So there was a lot of this sort of marriage of old men to young women in the upper classes of ancient Rome. And I don't know, and that had further impacts on Christianity later. It's a whole interesting topic, and I don't know I know why I got distracted by it because I wrote a book set in that setting, but it was just a cool thing that I thought I should share, that the biological fact that men become less fertile as they get older had all these ramifications on society. And, it shows you how important world building is, even in the real world.
I heard mention of a book. I think this is the book called What Lies Dreaming, available on Amazon and now available in audiobook due to some awesome people on the Bayesian Conspiracy Discord.
They are fantastic, and I love them. Wes and Hobo Demon and GSV. Thank you guys again. That fact actually has nothing to do in my book. It doesn't even come up. It was just something I'd learned while doing my research and thought it was fascinating.
I like that there was research involved in writing a story, which obviously there has to be because you're writing it in historical fiction. But it's like, again, when reading Alexander Wales, it's like, oh, I didn't know that when he's talking about the orphan trains is going to be my go-to example for the rest of my life. He's sitting there doing homework so he can write a better story, and that's just a really cool image. So it's cool thinking doing the same thing, reading over books of Roman history and the life and a day in the life of a Roman man or whatever to get a good example of what things looked like. That's awesome.
It also means that it's likely that her mom was in her 20s, married to someone who was in his 80s.
Nice. I'm kidding. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I mean, what she gets out of it is she gets to be the heir to the most, direct descendant to the throne of the empire or whatever. So I'm sure she's into
she gets a lot out of the deal, too.
Yeah. And maybe he's nice, Age is just a number, bro. So obviously, because her life was written by Lemony Snicket, her dad died when she was 2, and her mom died likely by assassination when she was 10. And so then Mystery 2, why can't they just teleport to the fortress? Because Amaryllis hasn't been there yet because her parents died before they could take her. And just like real life video games, you can't fast travel to a place you haven't been before. So
yes,
except for occasionally certain marked locations in this game, like homing beacon, or what do they call them, touchstones. So anyone can freely teleport to one of those, but other than that, you can't teleport to a place you haven't been to before. Which makes sense because it's fast travel. So
what is this about Jackie Daytona?
I
love Jackie Daytona, the fucking fantastic character. But what?
I'm glad I get to explain this.
Okay.
So then, Mystery 3, why is Sarah Laga there, and why is it in good working order? Well, because they were basically done building it when the desert was creeping in, or whatever the blight from the desert was coming towards working its way out. So they basically finished construction. They stashed all their shit there, and then they put up some wards, and then they got to bail because here comes the blight. And so, if you have a big cache of magical artifacts, naturally you'd keep some back at your super secret fortress to set aside for when things go to shit, is the line from the story. And in the TV show,
What We Do in the Shadows.
Thank you. What We Do in the Shadows. One of the vampires, the British one, he's fleeing, having to reconcile with an enemy from his past, who's played by Mark Hamill, is delightful. And he's got a basically a go bag in a random hotel room in the vent for when shit hits the wind. He's got his human disguise. And so it was just when it said for when things go to shit, it made me think of the phrase when shit hits the wind, which is what he says. And so he's got his blue jeans and his toothpick, which is his fail-proof human disguise, and his human persona is Jackie Daytona. So
yeah, dude, that was such a good episode.
So great.
I really hope we get more Jackie Daytona at some point, because that was a fantastic character.
It was delightful. I can't wait for season 3. So let's see. They are. It's fun. Even like the meta level of writing that Alexander puts into this, and that June puts into his own thoughts about it. So this parenthetical at the end of this section here says, "This small part of me that had initially scoffed at the adventure as being plainly a stereotypical adventure was mostly placated by all of this, because we've got answers to all these questions, right? But I was still trying to find some cracks in the world, some place where the myriad rules and facts didn't quite line up with what I observed." And so that explains why we get this long digression on it, because he's looking to find holes in the plot too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
He makes a wonderful audience surrogate.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So they're trudging along. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, okay. Sorry, all right. Well, I think that's one of the major appeals of Portal Fantasies, because I mean, there's sort of, I don't want to say cliche, but like when you think about it, a person from our time gets mysteriously teleported to some other world. It feels so unoriginal and silly, and like, how does this even possibly keep getting written? But
he's Harry Potter.
He's Harry Potter is a Portal Fantasy too. Yeah, but it's just because as an audience, we are being thrust at random into a brand new world, and there's something really nice about having the main character being in the exact same position and asking all the same questions, as opposed to like, if we're just following someone who's already grown up in this world, they wouldn't go around asking things like, "Hey, how big is the world and is it flat?" That would be something that you as an author would have to somehow sneak in there for the audience to pick up over time, which is also, a cool thing to do. But having an actual audience surrogate right there is just really, it's a fun reading experience.
It almost kind of gives me I don't imagine that this is how it came to be, but like, I can imagine a situation in which Alexander, had this awesome idea for a fully fleshed out world, and then is like, how do I exposit enough of this information at the readers to not bore them? Like, I want to write an encyclopedia on this place rather than like a story. Oh, I know. I'll make my protagonist an amnesiac who doesn't know anything about it, and that way people have to keep telling him about the awesome world I built.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't think that's how it worked, but that almost works as an exposition. Like, he's an exposition vacuum, or vacuum, right? He's magnet. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. So it works in a way that is fully satisfying to the story and to us. Anyway, so they can almost see the cliffs. It's getting to be dark, and so as they're approaching the cliffs, Fen is like, "Oh, so the Thumb Seekers don't have shit on us," because they made it all the way there without being attacked by any. They're using the rifle to shoot climbing holes, and like I think they're going to sleep through the night. They decide, they toss back and forth whether or not to climb at night, but climbing at night with a broken foot sounds like certain death. And predictably, he wakes up to screaming or to yelling. Yeah. I was also just glad that he says that he is starting to like his, I don't know, whatever, ramen soup. And I'm like, small silver linings, Yeah. At least his broth is tasty. If it tasted like garbage and it was just like their terrible sustenance, that'd be a bummer. But alas, it's good. So you pulled out the first sentence, which I'm just like, fuck it, flat planet. I'm not even gonna look at that again. But I'm glad you pulled it out. Go ahead.
It wouldn't be long before the sun, somehow, rose over the infinite plain of tessellating Arabs. No, seriously, how? I'm glad that's the first sentence, because when he said, Arab is flat and the sun rises but is seen in the same position for everyone across 80,000 miles and all that, I was like, okay, that's a thing, and I kept going. But he pulls it out again, and that made me stop and think about it for a bit, and I was like, what? The sun can't be orbiting this place because it is infinite?
And there aren't time zones.
And there aren't time zones, yeah.
And by that I mean there aren't, it's not morning over here and night over here. That it's all day or night for the whole flat disc. And I'm like, that just, again, I'm just like, fuck it. You do what you want to, planet. I'm not even going to try and explain you. If the story wants to tell me more about how you work later, that's fine. But I'm totally satisfied with the explanation we have now, which is, fuck, I don't know.
I'm curious if if Alexander Wales knows how it works, because I remember reading a book by Greg Egan after he got really big and he decided just to go full self-indulgent. He wrote a book where I think a quarter of it is just a textbook on his physics, where he's like, if time was literally a fourth spatial dimension and you could turn left to start going backwards in time, how would this look? And there's plot in the book too, but it goes on for extended sections where he's just explaining how that would work because he's a physicist. And it was really boring and I stopped reading it. But it was nice at least that he actually somehow knew the physics of how such a crazy thing could happen. And now I'm like, I wonder if Wales either figured this out himself through research or contacted a physicist or something. Does he know how this could actually happen, or is this pure magic?
In my mind, I'm going to just say it's pure magic, and that's as far as he cares to explain it, because I think it might be the point is that it makes no sense.
Yeah.
But, and if anything, that just screams this world is impossible,
yes.
Right? It's physically impossible in every, again, all right, fine, I can accept magic, and I can accept porcupine people, whatever. But you're telling me that you've got an 80,000 mile disc with a sun that doesn't rise but comes up anyway? What the hell's going on?
It's certainly impossible through any physics that we know, but there's lots of ways you can do physics that are very different, and maybe there's one where this would work. I don't know. I didn't look that much into it because I wouldn't have understood it even if there was an explanation.
I will render the prediction that there is no explanation for this. And
okay.
I'm fine writing that down. It doesn't matter, but we'll never understand how the sun works.
Okay.
And I will put a lower confidence, but also prediction that if we ever get to ask Alexander about it after he finishes the story, that he'll say, "Fuck, I don't know."
Okay.
All right. I'll put those down here in a minute. So anyway, they're being attacked by Thumb Seekers, which again, these Demogorgon monsters are super fast. They don't have good acceleration, but they go real fast unless you've got a teleportation machine. You can't really outrun them. So when they're being targeted by one that's running towards them, fleeing isn't an option, even if one of them didn't have a broken ankle. So Fenn's peppering it with arrows. It's not doing anything because these things are tough. And then it was on us, swiping wildly as it went over our heads and slammed into the cliff above us.
I love that its way of slowing down so it can attack them is just to slam into the cliff.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, and given that it went over their heads, it means that like it must have crested a dune and just like leapt off of it, going too fast that it just went straight over them rather than into them. And it doesn't have the and I picture the same thing too. And I'm glad that he called again. June is my perfect audience surrogate. I like that phrase. I don't know why I'd expected it to turn on a dime when it took so long to pick up speed. And I'm like, I pictured the same thing. I thought it'd be like super nimble and be able to do that. But like, no, it's just, it goes real fast. Anyway, so in a cry of triumph, June raises his sword and rolls to attack. Oh, nat 1. And when he goes to swing, he misses, the thing hits his hand, chops off 2 fingers, and he drops his sword with a critical failure alert. Fenn uses a magic volley to kill the one that's about to rip him to shreds, which, great, that one's down. But now, of course, they've put up a sky beam to attract the rest of them. And so...
Yeah. So they're like, let's get the fuck up this cliff right now.
Right. So first thing first, he grabs his big bag of bones and starts... Oh, there's a sex joke in there somewhere, and I missed the opportunity. he grabs his bones and starts going to work on Amaryllis. I don't know.
Oh my god, there it is.
So something like that. Anyway... What he is doing is he's healing her ankle, and it takes some number of minutes and some bones or whatever it is. Interestingly, he doesn't spare one to like slow the bleeding in his hand. But I get there in a rush. But I would have grabbed a handful more as I stood up when she was better or something. But they're busy; they're under attack. So
yeah, maybe he just plumb ran out of time.
Yeah, and they also ran out of like the slack to have the ability to like say gather up all their shit before they start making the climb, right?
It's like, nope, they just leave it.
Yeah, we're fleeing 6 or 7 of these so far, and because Fenn, I like this too. She says, "Is this where?" At some point, she's just like, "Sorry," and like it makes it seem like she's going to bail, but she just climbs up onto like a ridge and then shooting down from there. So I'd say take your time, but we have company approaching from all 6 sides, or from all sides. 6, nope, 7, and my guess is more to join the party shortly. It seems like I wonder what she'll be like in a bad mood, because she seems to always, or what it'll take to put her in a bad mood. She always seems just in enough spirits to make good humor about stuff. She was going to be a meat cannonball for the whatever Blackheart party, whatever, with the porcupine person, and she couldn't have been more chipper the entire time, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be killed in an hour, but hey, let's do stuff.
Right. I'm sure it'll work out.
Exactly. So
they start climbing the cliff, and he is falling behind due to like his wounds and the fact that these fuckers can climb, and they're getting really close. And he decides to get stupid.
I love this. He's climbing slowly because he's missing a couple fingers on one hand, and I'm assuming that makes it slippery and difficult to climb. But then when one swipes at his foot, cuts through his shoe and his foot, he's like, okay. All right, time to get stupid. And I'm like, my man, not even needing to know what his plan was. I'm just like, I'm super on board with this. Whenever anyone thinks that, I'm like, all right, fucking do it. This is going to be, Harry making a rocket in Azkaban kind of stupid. And it's not entirely dissimilar. He uses his blood magic jump to just start like careening himself up this cliff.
Yep. And it works.
They get to the top. Nice moment of teamwork there too, where when he's like at the edge, one of Fenn and Amaryllis each grab an arm, and I think his hand slips out of whatever bloody hand slips out, and then the other one grabs the other person to help pull them both up. And hey, teamwork! I love it. That's what makes the that's what was that?
Teamwork makes the dream work.
I wanted to say that, but then I was picturing. So I had that phrase, but the image I had was Quirrell having his hand open saying division and then closing his hand saying strength. And so that mental image just didn't jam with teamwork makes the dream work. But his Christmas speech would have had just a little less oomph to it if that's when the phrasing had chosen to use.
Yes, I liked his phrasing much better.
But it wouldn't have been delightful.
Yes.
All right,
Yes, it
so
would have
everyone
been
go home
great.
and enjoy your Christmas. Remember, teamwork makes the dream work. Now take the mark of the next Light Lord to come along. Um,
Yeah.
all right, so they're laying down, catching their breath. Oh, one of them, and this isn't even the Marvel nerd in me. Well, it must be, but I feel like this is a fair jump to make. So, like, one of them is trying to climb through the wards, and it's like being dissolved and ripped to pieces, like melting as it comes through. And like that again, because these things already kind of looked in my mind like those the Thanos's Mook army, and in Infinity War when they're trying to get through in Wakanda, like that blue wall, that they were doing the same thing. They're just ripping themselves to pieces trying to get through it.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
So yeah.
yeah, what's a bummer is that only one tries that because he gets a Thaum Seeker defeated when that happens. I mean,
Hmm.
and then they're sitting there for like 30 minutes when Amaryllis goes inside. Wouldn't you have like thrown rocks at them or peed on them or something just to get them to try and climb up and fight you?
Uh, I don't know, because like as soon as that thing got shredded by the ward, they like just sat down and stared at them like in synchronous, unmoving silence. It was like almost a scene out of one of those Exorcist type horror movies, you know?
Yeah.
And at that point, I would have assumed that nothing would get them to move until some weakness was shown, you know?
Maybe they're intelligent there. I was just thinking like, I'd stick my hand over the cliff and make a candle with it, right? Or like, whatever sort of magic I could do to just try and piss them off into trying to come attack me, or throw rocks. But when that didn't work, I'd start throwing magic at them as best I could. But
Mm-hmm.
you're right. Maybe they're actually smart. They're not merely just magic chasers. They're gonna sit there and do it tactfully. So,
I don't know, like if I would say smart, like, but smart enough at least to realize that there's a ward there that's going to stop them, and their best idea now is to sit and not blink as they're watching. Like they know that death lies on the other side of that line.
yeah, and they're definitely doing that like horrifying. Their heads aren't moving, unblinking stare.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely going full horror movie with it. Um, so there was a bit here too. So they're describing the castle that they're looking at, and Amaryllis has to go first, and it looks like it's going to be hard to climb. There's no doors, and then Fen is describing it, but the windows had to be narrow slits too, just in case some silly fuck decided to. God, I don't even know what your ancestors were thinking. I just thought that was interesting because it seems like an interesting choice of expletive, given that the gods are real here. Like,
Okay.
I don't quite know what to make. I guess people who use God as an expletive here, also many of them also believe God is real. But like,
Yeah.
it just first of all, it's God, not gods.
There is that. Yeah.
But again, I don't want to like read too deeply into everything because that could be the kind of thing that upon a professional edit he'd have added an S to that, like, or it's a clue. But I can't. If I view the whole story from the top of the ladder of paranoia, like I can't have any fun, or I have to have all one kind of fun.
But it
So
is. I mean, it is possibly Clue, and it is an interesting thing to pick out.
right from the dizzying height of being that high on paranoia, where the air is so thin you're going loopy. It could be, oh, you know what, that sounds like something someone from Earth might say, and maybe she's not an Arab native, but I'm not confident in that. It's just like,
Right.
again, if I had to be as paranoid as possible, that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I think.
If
Yeah,
she had
that's
said
one of those
something,
things that.
yeah, like I'm trying, like, what's a purely Earth expletive? Motherfucker almost counts, but you
Yeah,
could,
they have both mothers and fucking in Arab.
but it's like such a weird combination of things. I'm trying to think of like,
What? No, it isn't. I think just about every culture has had some kind of, expletive about mothers and sodomy or whatever.
very well. I'm trying to think of a, I mean, other than like making a movie reference, I can't think of what she could say that would be like a slip. But like some linguistic.
I think a movie reference would be a perfect example. Like if
Well,
some
but
movie.
that would be too intense. I'm trying to think of something subtle that could slip in, just like a linguistic loophole, right?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah,
No. But I mean, also it's hard to say because how much of that could have slipped in through June's head? Athenaeums exist, and there's no Athena in Arab, but apparently June had used that in a campaign, so it got in. Like, I'm not sure if Fen or Amaryllis has said okay yet. Maybe they have, maybe they don't, but okay is something that originated in, I don't know, 30s, 40s US culture. So
Yeah, but they're also already speaking English, so like that doesn't quite help.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if say if he was sleeping at the base of this castle and she's like, "Wake up, Lebowski, we got to go do stuff," like that
yeah,
would
that
be.
would be a sign.
Or I mean, God, this would just be delightful. Somebody's goofing off and she pulls her or Amaryllis points her gun at them and like, "Am I the one who gives a shit about the rules?" Um, something like that. That's just like an obvious movie quote.
Mhm.
That would be hilarious, and I hope something like that happens. But um, all right, so where were we? Oh,
Moving on.
yeah, they're
Okay, so
Amaryllis has to
they
get
get
into the castle.
yeah. While Amaryllis is gone, they start discussing like how June can level up because that would really help if he had his fingers back. And and he talks about like how he expected to get a level up by this point, considering they've defeated several Thom Seekers, but maybe not because it was Fen that defeated them, and she did it with her bow, so it wasn't very hard. And he tries to give this example that like, say you're making a game where people can get more powerful by killing goblins, and Amaryllis is right away like, don't speak of goblins like that. And I was first of all, that's kind of weird, but I guess it might be like if someone came to the U.S. and was like, "Say you can get more powerful by killing Mexicans," like that would also probably make some people look at you and be like, "Don't say that.
Well,
That's not."
it would make anyone who's polite look at you and say, "Hey, don't be an asshole," which is what she's
Yeah,
doing because to him, goblins are orcs, right? He's using them as
yeah,
the nameless thing you use to grind XP, and she's like, "Hey, don't you speak of those people that way?" Oh, right, I forgot they're real.
yeah. Yeah. But then Fen like has a problem with what he's saying because she says it sounds like a shit game if you're going to punish people for being smart. And June again tries to make an example, this time not using goblins, saying that if you're supposed to kill a bunch of undead, but instead of using a rifle and sneaking around, you build a giant trap and lure all the undead into it, you'd want to say, "Nuh-uh, that doesn't count." And Fen's like, "Is this a human thing? Because you set up an objective, and you need to have that objective accomplished. And if someone does it in some smart roundabout way, you slap them on the wrist." And I don't know. That is a thing that happens a lot in games where people do that kind of thing. I think he did. He give the example of putting a sword into the hand of a commoner and then killing them.
uh, no, I think that might have been me.
Okay, that
Uh,
was you.
we talked about that in the last episode when we were talking about like how guards could try and grind XP out of him. Oh, maybe you used that example. I can't remember, but
Okay, yeah,
I don't know if we actually called this out. This was explicit in chapter 19 that grinding didn't work unless he actually tried. Um,
yeah,
so like he got good at bow and arrow skills by he unlocked it by touching Ven's bow, and then she got him a crappy bow, and he couldn't just like nonchalantly shoot arrows at the wall while reading a book. He had to actually try and hit targets, and like the better he got, the smaller the targets had to be for it to like actually keep working. So,
yeah,
to that extent, he wouldn't get XP by digging a spike pit and walking the undead into it. He'd get some because that's clever, but like he couldn't just like my thing in The Walking Dead is the TV show was they're attracted to noise. And I mean, you just get a ride-on lawnmower and tip it on its back and turn it on and just let them walk into it over and over, right?
yeah,
Like the game might give you some XP, but it does seem like the kind of thing where it should cut you back and say, "Hey, look, this is cheap." You're and I get that's easier to bake into a like a Dungeons and Dragons scenario than it is like a console game or something. Um,
like you brought up the example of oh, what was it, Elder Scrolls, where you can use the potion making to make yourself a god in 30 minutes.
yes,
Yes, that is the thing that would never ever happen in a tabletop role-playing game, because the DM at some point would be like, no, it blows up in your face or whatever,
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
the worst that happens
But
in Elder
that's
Scrolls,
totally
the
a thing in
potion
video
doesn't
games.
doesn't work or something, right? Um,
Yeah, but I mean, like, then there's the question: is that unfair to punish people for being clever and finding out these things?
So it kind of depends on what the point of the game is, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's another spell in Elder Scrolls called I think Muffle, which makes makes your footsteps quieter, and you can just cast that as you're running around, walking from town to town over and over to get your illusion magic skill up, and you don't have to be around anybody. You don't have to, be avoiding detection. It just means you have to keep using the spell, like, because you're just practicing your illusion magic. And like that's a pretty cheap way, although I do it all the time when I play these games, to just level up a whole school of magic, right? And so when I was playing a Pathfinder campaign, um, clearly the GM, they can't call them DMs in that franchise.
But you can call them
Yeah,
DMs.
so the dungeon master wanted us to. He clearly had a quest in mind for us, and I wanted to do that. But one of the other party who had more practice wanted to do the equivalent of farming dire goats. And so as we're just going and ignoring the quest and moving north, there's just this gigantic wall, like 1,000 feet tall, and it extends miles out into the ocean. And all right, cool. Well, we're gonna go back to town and hire people to dig through it. And he's like, okay, you guys go do that. And then we're um, as they're getting through the wall, and it's like, a mile thick or some arbitrary thing. And he's like, all right. And so one of the workers calls out, hey, we're almost through. And the other guy in our party was like, tell him, great, hurry the fuck up. Like what the GM was trying to get us to do was to come into the tunnel and look at what was going on. But either the other party member was too savvy for that, or he was just like playing in character. But he basically calls back, he's like, great, hurry up. And then when they get through, this miasma poison starts coming through and killing everybody. And we're far enough away to make a break for it. But clearly the GM wanted to punish us for our digging through this wall. And I bring all that up because I think, and maybe that's part of this, universe, if we're getting meta with it, like if you're trying to tell a story and the story would be cheapened or ruined by, I sent a picture, and anyone who's played Skyrim would get it. It was somebody in full Daedric armor, which is like the highest tier of armor you can get in a lot of the Elder Scrolls games, or among the highest. And you don't even start getting it as an item drop until you're high level. And then it says Bleak Falls Barrow discovered, which is supposed to be like the first dungeon you go to. Okay. And so the joke is like this person went off and grinded somewhere else, ignoring the entire main quest because that is the first thing of the main quest. And went and became super powerful and like, all right, now I'm ready to go fight the spider in this cave. So like it's that was the joke. And so if you're trying to tell a story, and if June could just walk through it in Daedric armor with a plasma gun that shoots mini nukes and mind control matter, whatever, all the game breaking stuff that might be possible at the the end game, it would make the story less fun. So like if you're guiding the narrative, then yeah, that is my 10-minute way of saying I get how it might be cheap, quote unquote, but like that makes sense if that's what you're trying to do, is like guide a narrative for a story you're trying to tell, right?
I agree. It does make it a little bit less immersive though, when you feel like that kind of thing is being forced on you.
Oh yeah. I think that and again, my tabletop experience is limited, but I think that immersion just isn't expected, right? It's a kind of competition between how far can I push this before the GM slaps me down, and then
right.
the DM saying, how far will I let them get away with this before I slap them down, right?
Yeah, before he says, the wall you were digging under caves in and falls on you and you all die.
Right, you broke 2 legs, now you gotta crawl out of there, and oh no, you lost that expensive thing that you just were so happy you had or something, right?
Yeah.
So I get how, it is cheap in one way and fun in another. We'll have to see what kind of game this is. It seems like it's doing the Dungeons and Dragons-y thing where it's trying to push certain things to happen. Certainly, if like the tattoo just mysteriously works again later, I'm going to raise an eyebrow at the game itself and say, what the hell are you doing? So
Amaryllis has a comment on all this.
Oh yeah, unspoken rules. And then just thunk because she's busy working. We had to remove a general from violating them during the war games. And I'm like, well, that sounds like crappy war games to me. And I think you're spot on.
I would bet money that this is a reference to HBMOR. That the general is General Chaos, and he was just fucking up all their war games by being too creative and abusing the rules, rather than learning how to be a better spellcaster.
Yeah, better tactician. It's not tactics if you just keep plating your soldiers in plate mail, and if you're only allowed to use the sleep hacks, like, no, you're fucking cheating. Knock it off.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, I get that. Like, as you want to figure out everything that you can figure out when you're playing war games that the enemy might do, but like, if the general were to do something to win the war game in a way that couldn't happen in real warfare, then it just totally destroys the value of the game. And
war rhinos.
Get rid of the general. What?
So I was thinking they do a model UN thing, I think in Parks and Recreation, and somebody controls
Oh,
it was either they controlled the world's population of lions or rhinos, I forget.
okay.
And then it made me think of, like, I remember how jarring it was in Black Panther when the war rhinos show up in armor. And I'm like,
Mm,
I was watching, and then as they come onto the scene, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a comic book movie. Like, I completely forgot until these armor plated rhinos showed up again. Um, so anyway, yeah, if you're proposing that in your war games, they're like, all right, great, you're not playing, get out, right?
yeah.
Okay.
But June comments that he would have put an XP penalty on something that she killed with the power of the bow. And he says, I'm not asking you to stop, but if that's how we resolve encounters, I'm not sure I'll get that much out of them. And I mean, I see his point, but I think that's a really dangerous thought to have and to share, because that would, I mean, if someone told me that, that would incentivize me to use the bow less often, and that increases his chances of dying. Like, they've used it to save his life several times, and if there's some hesitancy, because like, oh, maybe we can find some way to kill it without using the bow, maybe you can't, and maybe then you die, and maybe you should have taken just that XP penalty to not be dead.
Yeah, it's definitely a trade-off. It's hard to think of a way he could convey that to her that wouldn't cause that hesitancy. Like, hey, can you wait till I fuck up or till it looks like I'm losing before you use it?
No, don't ever wait.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Because it's like, all right, well, when will that look like? When it's about to kill you? Well, then I've still got to shoot it. Like, I, I, you don't want to have people hemming and hawing on whether or not to save your life, right?
Yeah.
If they're not going to intervene because they want to give you a chance, that's a good way. Yeah, like I said, to wind up dead. So, I wanted to pull out too. So Amaryllis is gonna climb in and they're gonna camp out and wait for her. And Fen says, we'll be safe here. That ward won't activate on us if you're too far away. It says Amaryllis hesitated for a brief moment and says, you should be fine. And all I have is that I think she's been hesitant or like uncertain about a lot of aspects of this mission.
Yeah.
Certainly about the security. Like, oh, well, will this ward keep them out? And she's like, I think so. And I mean, granted, she's working from partial information that no one's told her anything about since she was 10 years old. But like, I wonder if she knows more than she's letting on, or if she knows less than she's letting on. Maybe she really just has no idea. She's like, I was told there's magic cool shit here.
Yeah.
That said, she comes back out with a glove, and apparently she had said, I thought there were two. So someone told her about some of the artifacts here, but anyway, he's sitting there reflecting, watching her just, climb up this wall with all the strength of a, professional rock climbing jazz pianist. And he's just thinking, he has this thought of like, oh man, both my companions are higher level than me. And
yeah. Which, I mean, that kind of sucks if you're supposed to be the main character.
yeah, but he levels up fast.
He does.
And he gets his skills fast. And I meant to mention that too when you were talking about how when Amaryllis wakes up and says, Fen, get dressed, and she does in a way that she ignored when June asked her to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Amaryllis's boss people around skill, I don't know if that's charisma or intimidation or whatever, is, oh, we didn't get to see him grind intimidation. That would have been hilarious.
Did he have intimidation?
Yeah.
He did, because he critical failed with it. Yeah.
I mean, he could have sat there and just, I don't know, threatening to slap Fen. She would have thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
The next time we see his character sheet, we'll have to see if it's maxed out. Because that sounds more valuable than... Because you don't intimidate unless you're in a situation where it might come to physical violence, maybe, right? So
Right.
I would think it's more ethical to use intimidation to get out of a situation than it is to use romance.
Well, I mean, you can use intimidate for unethical things, too.
Oh, absolutely.
You can intimidate someone into giving them your wallet.
Totally. I'm just thinking like,
Or-
I guess I would rather be scared into surrendering my wallet than being like unnaturally wooed into giving my wallet. If I had to pick, I don't know.
Because at least I get good feelings out of being unnaturally wooed, whereas I get scared and violated feelings out of being intimidated.
But I guess if I had a chance to look back on it, I'd feel horribly scared and violated the fact that I felt really good about giving that guy my wallet. But I'm thinking, if he's trying to get out of a jail cell or something, for example, that's what I keep thinking of all the social skills for, is like arguing his way out of prison. Being able to terrify the guard, I feel like that is an acceptable use of intimidation. But in any case, I hope that his intimidation's leveled up. And if it's not, I hope we get to watch him level it up.
I think that's just a bad example in general, because if you're thrown in a dungeon, it's pretty much ethical to do anything at all to the guard to get out.
Yeah, I was realizing that when I was thinking of why would I prefer intimidation over romance. And you're right, I wouldn't care. Like, especially if, I'm waiting for the executioner or the torturer to show up. Like, I mean, I will do anything, right?
Right.
I will
I'd
I will
rather
use
not kill
blood bending
him,
magic to
maybe?
force that guy's body over here to bring me the keys, right? Even if it means
Exactly.
totally killing him. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So his companions seem to be higher level than him, and Amarillo seems to have a higher intimidation and or charisma, whatever skill it is used to command a party. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm guessing it is charisma because she's not intimidating them, just saying, "Hey, let's go do my mission." She just kind of
Right.
like, "Hey, this is the best one," and they're like, "Yeah, you're right." I think she does have. Again, I'm on the fence about whether or not the people in this world have intimidation and flattery and whatever in ways that level up that they're just fully unaware of. You know, it could be that this is a game for everybody. They just don't have the game layer and they're not aware of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it. I don't know. I mean, that could be tested by if either Amaryllis or Fen aren't ambidextrous. They could train one of them up in parrying, and once they get really good at parrying, say, "Hey, now try writing your name with your offhand." You know?
Yeah, but that may just maybe they'll think that's part of blade-bound magic or whatever. Because apparently, if you get good enough with a sword, you can start deflecting arrows and blocking void gunshots.
Right, but if it was a sudden thing, maybe after literally every parry, hey, try and no, because then you could just practice the writing with the left hand. Um,
Yeah,
but
right.
but
And I mean,
for him, it was a switch. You know?
yes, but the big thing about June is that everything for him is super fast. Like he learned magic in what is normally a multi-year process for people.
Oh yeah,
Like you probably wouldn't notice if it took you multiple years to train ambidexterity because that seems normal.
yeah, yeah. Fair enough, huh? So I'll have to try and think of. I'll try and brainstorm ways where if the other characters operate on game rules but are unaware of it, I wonder how I would test that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there's probably a way though.
I'm sure there is. I won't pause I won't pause the show to think about it. I'll think about it between this week and next week. So while they're sitting there hanging out, um, I don't know. You pull this out. You know, Fen is like, I think she's. You know, what do you think she's going to abandon us? And I feel like June's right. Like you're just looking for an excuse to give me a favor. Um, so
So yeah, June says 1% chance that she's going to abandon us, which I don't know. That was interesting that he just straight up said 1%. He seems pretty confident in that, and I don't know. Is that like game logic based on her loyalty, or I don't know where he got 1% from.
I think friendship too. I mean, like you got to think, why would she bother dragging them all the way out here unless she was actually concerned with keeping this group slash party together? Like, yes, it would be nice to have some meat shields to keep the Thaum Seekers at bay or something, but like I don't know.
Then why percent as opposed to basically none?
Well, I mean, I guess because she asked for odds and zero isn't a percent, or
Yeah,
so or
it's not an odd you can bet with.
right, 0 and 100 are not probabilities. So he just gave the lowest. He could have said epsilon approaches 0, but even that sounds kind of like I would assign a higher chance than that to you betraying me in the situation, right? It's
Right.
slightly higher. It's slightly higher than 0%, but probably less than 1. Um, so
So yeah,
anyway,
now then she has this cool idea since June is completely broke to bet with favors that if she wins, he owes her 100 favors, and if he wins, she owes him 1 due to the 100 to 1 odds. Which I thought was a really clever way to resolve that. But also, since June wins the bet, Fen now owes him a favor, and we don't see him get a favor in this chapter. So I'm saying this is the new Harry's pet rock.
well, I mean, it could also just be like Harry's favor that he gets from Draco, where he cashes in on it 3 months later and is like, learn the Patronus charm.
Oh yeah, okay.
But it could be the next thing. Maybe he'll wait until way later. It'll be 215 chapters later, where he's like, "Hey, remember that favor you owed me from our first quest?"
Yeah. And
So
Draco's like, no, what are you talking about? We were 10.
exactly. Anyway, what the other funny thing was that he was like, if she doesn't come back, we're going to just die here. Like, there's no way for you to collect on this. And she says, who knows? Maybe we'll end up in the same hell. There's no death clause on this bet, June. If we start with death out here, or if the ludicrous wards, if the ludicrous wards up and kill us, then I'm a coming for you to make you pay up. I think that's kind of funny. Like, I mean, people have a pretty blasé attitude
Stephen
about
pulled
death.
out a Fen's. Yeah, Steven pulled out a fan stand line.
I don't dislike Ben. Uh, I prefer. Why do I have to pick? Why not?
You
As
don't have to
as
pick.
as somebody dropped in the Discord a picture of a Zoidberg. Why not both?
Exactly.
um, but it's not even apples and oranges. They're different kinds of food. But anyway, I just like how she's super blasé about death. Like, oh yeah, hell's just a thing that happens to people. I'm not even, we don't even worry about that anymore. So
Yeah.
it's just a de facto thing that, oh yeah, after we die, we might bump into each other. We still don't know how it's decided who goes to what hell. So I mean, your odds are pretty slim of bumping into any one person, but
Right. 1 in 9,000. And
yeah,
that's assuming that the hells are small enough that you'll bump into people? Like, I don't know how big a hell is.
yeah, hells could be huge, and it's not impossible too that you might be able to go up and down levels in hell. Um, I don't see why that shouldn't be allowed. I'll have to do
It
some.
also assumes that you'd bump into people. Like, maybe you're just in a hot cage being burned forever. I don't know. I think this is mostly a joke on Fenn's part, but
Yeah,
it's
that's
a healthy attitude to take about dying.
well. There is something to be known about hell because they can peer into the first 4 or 5 thousand layers or whatever with their heloscopes or whatever they were called, inferno
That's
scopes,
true.
I think. So like,
So maybe she has good reason to think she could come find June in hell.
but they can literally just like turn on a TV and watch what's happening in hell. Like,
Yeah, but why would you want to?
I guess to see what you're in for. I mean, like,
I mean,
I don't know. But the fact
you
is,
gotta.
like, whether you want to or not, the fact that this knowledge is available is just a horrifying fact of this world, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could actually go in and look at I mean, there's a non-zero chance that Amaryllis has seen her parents in hell. Like,
Yeah, if they didn't get spiked.
that's like just the most over-the-top horrible thing to imagine, and that's just like people here are just used to that shit. But again,
Yeah.
uh, Alexander's just delightfully good at writing horrible, horrifying situations that are compelling as hell. So,
Mm.
luckily they don't die in the heat. Amarilla shows back up.
Huzzah!
Yay!
With, she
And
has she has a plan to put them in this extra dimensional glove and climb back up while she's holding the glove, so that they can get up without having to climb themselves. And
yeah, I'm calling
so
complete
here's
shenanigans on that. That's a stupid plan.
yeah. Let's get into that in just a second. But real quick, I just want to pull out like we June says I'd be more comfortable with rope, which first of all, kind of a mean thing to say, June. But Amaryllis, it says Amaryllis's face fell, and before when I was first reading through this, like I didn't really have that good of an idea of what Amaryllis looked like. Like I said, I kind of pictured her like the princess from that cartoon. But since we posted our first or second episode, someone put in some fan art of Amaryllis, and I said she looks kind of like this acquaintance, this person we both know named Katrina, and like I have seen Katrina's face fall, just like going from happy to all of a sudden kind of like, oh, disappointed or whatever. And so when I read this line, like I saw that in my head, and it the whole thing felt a bit different when there was like a friend whose expectations had just been really disappointed being my reference frame for how this looks. I felt really bad for her when June said that.
Yeah,
Like, June.
it's kind of funny. Yeah, Katrina was our first co-host on the Bayesian Conspiracy, and
Yeah.
that art did look surprisingly like her. So I'm basically, you can picture that face of like what I'm guessing is like shoulder length red hair or something. But uh, what I don't get though is, so she's like, "Hey, I tested these on chairs. It's safe." So her glove absorbs people into the void, or it absorbs objects up to the size of at least a big chair, and like then she can spit them back out at will. And he's like, "How about rather than get into your glove, you like see if you can find us some fucking rope?" And that puts her out because why?
She says, if there was any rope to be found, I would have brought it.
Yeah, but like, why does her face fall like she's been like you said, like it's not trusting. It's like I don't. It's not like I watched you climb like a professional. It's not that I don't trust your climbing ability. It's that we haven't tested that. Testing it on gloves and testing it on people are two very different things. Or, excuse me, testing that glove on chairs and people.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
for all we know, you compress the chair into the size of the pinpoint of a needle, and then it comes back out fully formed as a chair, which could be fine for a chair, but does not work well on people. Like, We don't know how the thing works. I'm not getting in your fucking glove. Like, I
I I agree with you that it was. I think it was unreasonable for her to be so disappointed by his request. I don't know. I just think this is one of those things where we have to think that it was a reasonable question, and she has to be disappointed because she thought we'd have more faith in her or something. I don't know, man.
and
I'm with you. I just felt bad for her.
it could also be too that her face fell not into like disappointment that, oh, you don't believe in me, but it's like, look, yeah, I don't have any good options, man. If I had rope, you guys would have it too. And so she's like, look, I can go inside and look for something to fashion into a rope, but the sooner that we get in there, the sooner we can split up and start searching for something that'll extend the time it takes for us to starve. And you pulled out, you had me at starve.
Yeah, that was a good line, extra good because he said that's an old D&D joke that the traditional continuation is, but starve was the last thing I said, which is a good joke. But the fact that neither Amaryllis or Fen said anything at all is I believe this means they have not seen Jerry Maguire. So they may be from Earth, who knows? But if nothing else, they have not seen that movie.
Oh, I haven't either, but that's where the line "you had me at hello" comes from, right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. I have seen enough pop culture to be aware of that. So Fen frowned. You want to stick us into a glove? And she's like, yeah, just for a moment. I can make the climb before you run out of air. If there's air to run out of inside the glove. And it's like, we don't even know. Again, it could be the vacuum of space. It could, for all we know, this glove puts things in hell before pulling them back out. Like
Yeah.
There's no reason to have any suspicion that this is non-lethal. That lethal would be my default assumption until proven otherwise. Like I don't get her confidence in it, but
maybe she just made a really good persuasion roll.
I guess Fen seems to roll with it. She says, "Fine, Juniper, if I die, avenge me."
Yeah.
That famous last words.
So now, I didn't pull this out in my read through, and this didn't occur to me before, but seeing how you were talking about earlier, how she made that joke about going to the hells, and just now about avenge me, it doesn't it seem to you like Fen has sort of a death wish thing going?
It does not seem like she places a high priority on living.
Yeah, she seems a little bit suicidal-ish here.
I think I'm picturing her. All right, so
maybe that's why she's in such high spirits, because she's like, if I die, hell, ain't nothing wrong with that.
Except literally hell.
Well, yeah, but once you're suicidal, you're probably not thinking that rationally anyway.
See, I'm not thinking of her as suicidal. I'm thinking of her more as, and I'm glad we're doing this podcast because you get the reference perfectly, more as Kenshin. Like, in the first main arc of the story, he places virtually no preference on his life over death. He cares about trying to make the world a little bit of a better place to try and make up for something bad he feels bad about, but he doesn't care at all if he dies in the process. So I kind of picture, but that's not suicidal. He'll fight to save his life. He'll fight to save the lives of those he cares about. But he doesn't care if his quest or his goal costs him his life, right?
Right.
So I kind of so that's different than suicidal. I'm picturing Fen more along that side, not necessarily on the exactly the Kenshin mindset, but I'm picturing her more in that camp than in the just I'm stoked on dying camp.
Right. Yeah. I guess suicidal is not the right term. More like death wish, I suppose. Although death wish isn't quite the right term either.
Death wish is almost, I think, is closer though. Like she seems to be willing to, again, her reason to go to the desert, she could go do whatever she wants. June's going to go along because, he's got a quest. But Fen could do whatever she feels like doing. But she's like, no, I'll go to your stupid, obviously risky as fuck quest through the desert because, why not? Like, because it sounds dangerous and fun.
Yeah.
So Fen gets in the glove and is told to hold your breath. It takes 10 seconds to charge up the glove. And then Amaryllis goes over to him. And what does she like? Put her hand on his forearm or something? I don't know where she grabs him or if she just has to put it out in front of him.
She grabs him on the wiener.
If you don't have to touch something to suck it into the glove, that actually is kind of extra powerful.
No, it said specifically you got to touch it.
Oh, gripped her forearm. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so, but for real, why doesn't she pull out sections of the wall and have them walk in through that?
I imagine because the wall counts as one object.
That was my guess. But I just, it like, they didn't even try.
Like, the entire wall, I figure, is too big to fit in the glove. So, yeah, it's true that she didn't try.
Oh, but you're right. walls aren't built with bricks here. Even if this one looks like it was probably conjured with magic, in which case it is one thing, right? In the
Right. But
sense of
even
the whatever, the steel ball being a steel ball and not half of a steel ball and half of a rubber band, right? Or
yes,
of an
no, I mean,
eraser.
I agree with you, and probably that's the case. But it does mention like when she was climbing up, she found cracks or whatever. I would I didn't actually think about this, but I would imagine that like even a standard brick and mortar wall would count as just one thing for magical purposes. That you couldn't pull out individual bricks that had been mortared in. You'd have to like chip them out with a hammer and chisel first.
How reductionist is this glove?
This glove has obviously not read Gödel, Escher, Bach.
I guess. I mean, they could have used their void rifles to shoot through the wall and stuff. And again, I'm not. So they get through. Spoiler alert! At the end of the chapter, they make it. It works fine, but like the plan is no less stupid just because it worked.
Right.
This is the most reckless thing that he's done. I think by a mile. Like this struck me as like if you had asked me what are the odds that you will survive this, I'd be like, I don't know, 1 in 100. Like I have no reason to think that this will kill me.
Yeah. I agree that it was pretty damn reckless. He did say that he would take 1 in 100 odds of dying.
Right, my odds were
Which
reversed.
that you
I
think it
feel
would
like
only work 1 out of 100 times.
yeah, like my guess is like again with nothing to go on. All I'm told is that okay, cool. This glove puts something in the void, and it somehow fits in your hand or goes somewhere else. Like I don't know where that is.
So
Um,
can I tell you a brief story about my own stupidity that I really regret now?
if you'd like, I'm super into it.
Because I think it might touch on this subject. I was told way back in middle school in shop class not to push the compressed air hoses against people. Like as a joke, some kids are dumbasses. Maybe like you push it on someone to like hurt them with a jet of compressed air against their skin. But the shop teacher, which obviously terrible idea, you don't want to do that. But the shop teacher specifically told us this is because it can force a bubble of air through the skin into a vein, at which point it will travel up to the brain and give the kid a stroke. So you're basically killing someone if you push this against them. That turns out not to be the case at all.
Yeah, why would he lie when
But
it's perfectly dangerous with the real explanation?
yeah, exactly. I don't know why he did that. But interestingly, when I was going in for, I think it was when I went in for my spine steroid shot. They put some something into my veins. I don't even remember what it was right now. Through an IV, but like there was bubbles in the tubes, and I was like, "Hey, there's bubbles in the tubes there." And the nurse said, "Oh yeah, that's fine. People get a little bit of bubbles in them all the time. It's not a big deal unless there's like a foot or two of solid air in the line, and then you'll get the bends or something. It'll be bad." And I was like, "Oh okay," but like I thought even as she was doing it, she's probably right. My home ec teacher was probably stupid. I would have heard about this from someone other than him if it'll kill you. But there was still this thing in the back of my head that's like, you're doing something potentially lethal right now. And I swear to God, I should have said, no, wait, stop. I heard this thing. Please explain it to me or let me look it up or something. And instead, I was just like, meh, okay, go ahead. And took a complete, what I thought was a lethal risk for no reason at all, aside that I didn't want to be kind of inconvenient and embarrass myself in front of a fucking nurse.
Oh man.
And this was just like 3 months ago, and I keep dwelling on this. Like, how fucking stupid am I that I took what I thought was a lethal risk so I wouldn't be slightly embarrassed? Like, I should not have done that.
I think you're merely human, and that's understandable. That is a good story, and I get where you're going with it. So I guess I've got two questions. One, I mean, so this could just be deference to authority.
The answer is no. I did not die.
Well, no, that wasn't. I guessed that one.
Okay.
The reason that you kind of went along with it is like a medical authority said, "Oh no, it's fine," and like totally routinely, she didn't say, no, you should be okay, right?" Like it was like, "Oh no, this happens all the time," and that is just the way it works. Like small air bubbles just dissipate. But the question I was going to ask was she hot?
I think I would have remembered if she was, so I'm going to go with average.
Oh, and if this was a few months ago, everyone was wearing masks, so
yeah, that too.
yeah. So you can't really, I mean, you can tell to some extent. I was going to say, because she's pretty, that could explain why, the same reason that why June goes into this glove, because it's like, well, all right, the pretty girl will be sad if I don't do this.
I don't want to look like a coward in front of her.
Right. But no, that I like that. That's a good example. And people do that stuff all the time. Every time I'm out in public and, having to direct the cashier or something who's not wearing a mask properly, I don't ask them to wear it properly. Even though it's been a year and a half, get your shit together, people. Like, this is not last April, where I still understand if you don't know that breathing through your nose is the same as breathing. Anyway, so, every time I don't correct them, I'm doing kind of the same thing that you did with that nurse. But, well, all right. So they get into the glove. She climbs up. Basically, he's in the void. I did have a comment briefly, but then I knew it didn't fit as well as the Jackie Daytona one, which was already forced. But when he's describing the void, it feels like space. I just put Space Core from Portal 2 has entered the chat. But I removed that comment because it was not at all relevant. So he's basically hanging out in a weightless void. But the cool thing about it is that he can see the way out, and he intuits that if I just push my intention towards that, I'll get out. So that's a really nice way to not panic, knowing that you can escape should you absolutely need to. But before he needs to, he's ejected from the glove by Amaryllis instead, and sudden jolt of pain as his wounds are exposed. So I guess it didn't hurt inside the void either.
By the way, did you caught that it sounds like he counted up to 100 or more. Have you ever tried to hold your breath for a really long period of time?
Yeah, he hit the triple digits, and I have, and I don't know how long I can hold my breath. Not as long as I used to be able to, for sure. I used to be have more skill points in cardio.
Yeah. I think pretty much anyone can do a minute, but it's hard. But he was getting close to 2 minutes there, and 2 minutes is fucking difficult. That takes usually some conditioning.
The key is you've got to be calm and basically want your pulse low first, and then your heart rate, and then I'll time it tonight and see how far I can get.
And he did hyperventilate for a few seconds beforehand, so that helps a bit too.
Yeah, which is surprising because hyperventilating also gets your heart going a bit. It's counterintuitive because you'd think, all right, I want to calmly take a deep breath and keep my body as calm as possible. But no, actually, just again, getting way too much oxygen in you is a good way to make it so you don't need oxygen for a few more seconds. Right. Anyway, so he comes out gasping for air, and
technically,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Technically, it's expelling a lot of carbon dioxide, makes it so that you don't have to cycle your carbon dioxide as quickly.
Thank you. You're right, and the incorrection there. I own that I had that wrong, but I feel like I knew that because I wasn't surprised when you explained it, but I had it wrong, and thank you for correcting that.
Hey, no worries.
It's important we not miseducate our listeners. Oh, speaking of educating people properly,
more so than we already have, anyway.
Well, all right. So why is it dangerous to spray somebody with an air hose, especially at point blank or compressed air? Because it could rip their fucking skin. It is graphic as hell, and you should have just said that. So anyway, don't if you're thinking that it's safe to spray people with compressed air, it's not. But not because of air bubbles, but because it can cut like a knife. It's nasty. Don't look it up. Anyway, he comes out and he's injured briefly until he gets a nice level up with his quest completion. So this is it. You've arrived at Karalaga and laid claim to the heirlooms within. You may return to Karalaga at any time with your teleportation key. So the first 2 times I read that, I took that to mean your teleportation key works now. I guess what it means is that you have a teleportation key, and even though it's locked in this lady's arm, when you get to use it again, you can teleport back. So the cool thing about that is you don't have to teleport literally everything, or you don't have to bring everything with you on your way out this trip, which, and now you've got a secret desert base. This is actually really cool. We spent a disappointingly short amount of time in Baron Jewel. I hope that they make use of their desert fortress at least more than this visit. It would be awesome if they set it up as a kind of base of operations. Other people haven't been here, it seems like. And
it's got a lot of wards around it.
It's got wards, and especially, specifically keyed to her. They bring in food and water and whatever. They could make this their bunker, and this could be their fortress of solitude. Yeah. Okay, I really hope they do that. But again, when I say this a lot about everything about the story, I hope they do this. I want this to happen. If whatever I want and things to happen in the story, I'm always thrilled in how things are working out. If my desires aren't met, it's because something has, come in and surprise me in a new way that is at least as satisfying. So, okay.
So when he gets his level up at the very end, he gets his fingers back.
Yep. And he wonders if there's duplicate fingers in the desert, and I'm just like, hey, free food business.
Right.
That said, at the very least, I bet those bones are potent for something.
Oh. Yeah, but they're surrounded by thumb seekers, so hard to get.
Right. Those bones in particular are hard to get to. They may have even been eaten. If I was a thumb seeker, even if I just eat magic, I would eat some fingers if I, was hungry. I don't know what they need to eat, but
you're saying if he ever finds out that he's really close to a level, he should cut off all his limbs and then level up.
If he has a way to be really, really sure.
Okay.
I mean, in all seriousness, I don't see a problem with that. Maybe not all of your limbs because you might bleed out and die first, but like if if you can chop off a hand or an arm and then cauterize it with blood magic, and then whatever it is, you've got a big boss that you've knocked out on the floor in front of you and you need to kill him to finish the quest. All right, well, I'm going to chop my arm off first, and then I will shoot him in the face, get my level up, and then I've got this arm full of these juicy bones that are full of all kinds of magic because I'm a badass, right?
Yeah.
That's probably not worth the trouble, now that I think about it. I mean, unless his bones turn out to be amazingly potent, you get a boost from bones. You don't get like a permanent power up. So maybe put that low on the science experiment list. But
yeah, well, I mean, it depends on how potent his bones are, and also on how sure you are you're about to get a level.
And I was going to say how hungry he is, but I forgot that when you level up, you aren't hungry anymore. So yeah.
So you mean so that he could eat his own flesh?
I mean, if it came down to it. But I forgot that when you level up, that was the awesome thing when he got after the rat business. He wasn't even hungry anymore after he leveled up. So
yeah. And I guess you weren't going to catch any diseases from your own flesh that you don't already have.
I don't know if anyone's done any homework on that. I'm sure they have because there's been lots of fucked up science in the past. Other than like the dangers of eating raw meat, I don't know. No one link me anything that's not overly academic on this. I don't want any pictures. Okay. So Fen is catching her breath. It says most wood elves can hold their breath for an hour. I guess she's a wood elf. We knew that there were different species of elves when they emigrated from the moon. She didn't get her dad's lungs. And here we are. I've been sitting here since, when did I text you? Like Wednesday at lunch?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I read through these last 3 chapters really fast. I'm going to do the same thing this time because I hate myself and because I can't stop myself. I was up till midnight last Tuesday reading, and then I was like, all right, well, A, I'm going to be tired for work, and B, I'm not saving myself any time to savor this, but I needed to know what was happening. So Amaryllis ends this chapter by saying, come on, let me show you the fruits of our labors.
Yes. I am happy to tell you that you will be able to read more than usual because I figured let's go with 4 chapters this time.
Awesome.
Yes. So for next week, we are reading chapters 22 through 25.
Awesome. I will get the names of those because my thing is stupid.
Oh, yeah.
24, like a glove. Wait, 22.
No, starting at
22, rolling need through 25. Rocket Man. Oh, my God. And I don't know if this counts as a spoiler, but I saw the chapter name for 26. Superman? Really, Alexander Wales? Really? I am so excited. You're leaving me on a cliffhanger, aren't you? You son of a bitch.
They're
all cliffhangers. Let's be real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is a web serial. This is going to be how it goes. It's going to keep me on the edge of my seat every time. But all right, how exciting! Man, I'm stoked.
Let's tell people. Yeah, me too. Let's tell people the thing.
Before we do that, first, I got to say, we talked about doing these 3 chapters as an experiment. We're talking about 2. And we were like, if we can keep it on point longer, I thought this would be a good case study for that. I think we did a good job. So I feel like we are capable of keeping things focused. And I didn't miss a chance to say anything I wanted to say anyway. So
I agree. I think we still went longer than would be ideal, but at least it's not terrible.
That's fair. All right, tell people the thing. You mean the thing?
The thing is that they can support us on our Patreon if they would like to. We give 15% of it to Alexander Wales, although, of course, you can also support Alexander Wales directly on his Patreon, which you might want to do as well, because, as Steven says...
This is his game, we're just playing it.
Hell yeah! But if you would like to support us as well, you can do that on our Patreon, which is linked in the show notes and on the website hpmorpodcast.com. Once we get to 25 patrons, Stephen will write us a script that is in the Ryan George pitch meeting style.
Oh, supporting content creators you enjoy is tight.
Exactly. We are at 14 right now, so we're more than halfway there.
Oh, that's awesome. You guys all rock.
Yeah.
Great. Have fun.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again next week.
Awesome. Chapters 22 through 25. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Bye.
Later.